Hi, everyone, fellow commissioners. I don't want to use the gavel, so please don't make me do it. So it's good to see everyone in attendance. It is 4:06 p.m., September 25th. Okay. So this is the Yolo County Climate Action Commission. I am calling this meeting to order. So before we do the roll call and dive into the agenda, as a reminder, we did not have a meeting last month due to personal circumstances with one of the staff having to attend a medical issue, which means that today we have a very packed agenda. So I will ask us to be mindful of that. One of the last item on the agenda warrants a very strong, solid conversation. So let's try to carve out as much time as possible also for that particular item. So not everyone is here yet, but we have a quorum, so we'll get started. We are ready for the roll call.
Commissioner Reed is running late, but will be here shortly. Commissioner Daddle?
Here.
Commissioner Ullman?
Here.
Commissioner Kim is absent. Commissioner Serena?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here, but our mics are on. Here.
And for the folks over there, for whatever reason, the mics are typically somewhat delayed. Pull them really close to your mouth when you speak. Thanks so much. Chair Mbondo?
Here.
Commissioner Austin is absent today. Commissioner Alvarez?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Bennett?
Here.
Commissioner Britton?
Here.
Ex officio member Sarah Morgan?
Here.
And ex officio member Carla Fresquez?
Here.
And then we have Oliver Snow representing Supervisor Provenza, District 4.
And
Commissioner Reed?
okay. Thank you, Kristen. So let's look at agenda item number 1. Commissioner Ullman will read the land acknowledgement for us.
Thank you. We should take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of the Patwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Patwin tribes: Kachil Dehi Band of Wintun Indians of the Calusa Indian Community, Quetzal Dehi Band of Wintun Indians, and Yoka Dehi Wintun Nation. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands.
Thank you, Commissioner Ullman. Let's move on to agenda item number 2, approval of the agenda. Please refer to attachment B. So I'm asking my fellow commissioners, do you approve the agenda as you've received it? Any discussions, comments on that?
Move to approve.
That's Commissioner Britton, okay.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Serena. Comments, discussions before we put it to a vote? Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Daddle?
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman?
Aye.
Commissioner Serena?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Chair Mbondo? Commissioner Alvarez?
Abstain.
Commissioner Bennett?
Aye.
Commissioner Britton?
Thank you. The motion passes. So that takes us to agenda item 3. I would like to welcome the members of the public. I do recognize someone in the audience. This is a good time for members of the public online or in person to make a comment on an item that is not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment?
I don't see any public comment at this time.
Okay, so that closes our time on agenda item number 3. Let's look at agenda item number 4. So we're going to look at the minutes from July 24th, 2023, the commission's minutes.
If I could make an amendment, Christine Shoemaker pointed out an error in the discussion about the item of Valley Clean Energy's goals. And so there was a typo in the goal there that will be corrected in the amended minutes.
Thank you. And I made a mistake because I referred earlier to attachment B. That's actually the YCCAC minutes from July. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment?
So moved.
That's Commissioner Ullman. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Reed, second.
Thank you. Feedback, comments, discussions on that item? We're ready to vote. Thank you.
Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Daddle.
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman.
Aye.
Commissioner Serena.
Aye.
Commissioner White.
Aye.
Chair Mbondo.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Abstain.
Commissioner Bennett.
Aye.
And Commissioner Britton.
Okay, so thank you. The motion passes. Agenda item number 5. We're going to listen to staff announcements, reports, and we're starting with an introduction of the new UC Davis ex officio member, Carla Fresquez. Thank you for joining us today and congratulations on the new position.
Hi, Carla. Thanks so much for joining us. If you just want to take a few minutes to introduce yourselves to the commission, we're thrilled to have Carla. Our staff has had the chance to meet with her a couple of times, and we're really excited to have her on the team. So go ahead, introduce yourself. Thanks.
My name is Carla Fresquez. I am the Engagement Program Manager with UC Davis Sustainability and Interim Director of Sustainability. I'm just pleased to have the opportunity to work closely with you all on this and future governance structures. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again. We look forward to working with you.
And next, I'm excited that we are joined today by our 2 new Civic Spark Fellows for this service year, Yuridiana Pantoja and Tess Vaccaro. Am I pronouncing that right? Okay, great. They're amazing. They started last Monday and have already been hard at work getting to know all of the things that our team is doing and preparing to support various action aspects of the CAP and our early action. So I want to give them both the chance to introduce themselves. And that mic, you just have to turn it on in order to speak. So Yuridiana, you go first.
Hello, I'm Yuridiana. You can also call me Yuri for short. And I am from the Central Valley and I just moved up to Davis this summer. I'm really excited to be a part of your team and just to learn more about everything you guys are doing and be in everything as possible as I can. So I'm going to pass it on to Tess.
And also, I'll add that Yuri is going to be supporting a number of our early action projects, including the electrification retrofit rebate outreach program, the AERO program with Valley Clean Energy, and getting our home energy score, home energy labeling program off the ground. That's one of the early actions that's really been delayed due to lack of staff capacity. And so we're excited to have her on that. Tess.
Hi, my name is Tess Vaccaro, and I'm from Sacramento. I just graduated from UC Santa Cruz with a degree in sociology, and I will be working on advancing equity and engagement surrounding the climate action and adaptation plan. And I've already been in contact with everyone. I sent out an email today prompting for one of our first outreach on social media. So if anyone's interested in making a little video and sending it my way, feel free to do so. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. I can tell you that we have been waiting for you for a very long time. We look forward to working with you, and kudos, Tess, for already asking things of us on your first days on the job. Thank you. We're ready for the next item.
Great. So the next item, item C, is another request to continue to share updates with the other city level boards and commissions and NGO boards that you all serve on. We have, skipping down, previewing item E, we've extended the deadline for our survey. I know that you have already been doing a great job of sharing these announcements with other relevant boards and commissions. A final ask to do that for this survey. I know it's unlikely that you have a meeting in the next few days, but an email goes a long way. And then moving forward, if it would be helpful for staff to come to give presentations to any of the other boards and commissions that you sit on about this CAP process, we are happy to do that. I think look and defer to the many of you who do serve serve in those multiple roles to tell us when a good time would be and to make that connection, but just wanted to make that offer to you all. The next item, so D, is an update on ARP funding from the July 25th Board of Supervisors meetings. This was a lot more recent when we were going to be discussing this at the August meeting, but it's still relevant. So very excited to share that we received $300,000 from the board to conduct our inventory and feasibility study. This is one of the ones that we've been looking for grant funding for the past year plus, and the very internal nature of it was making it very difficult for it to be competitive for funding, but the board acknowledged how central this was to us meeting a lot of our emissions reduction goals. So we received that in ARP funding. It was really competitive. There's very little funding left, and we were so thrilled to receive that funding. Similarly, along those lines, we had a conversation about the urgency of spending those funds down. And in the process of making the request for this additional pot of funds, just completing the early action projects that we have on our plate will more than use the entire $1 million or 1.3 of ARP funds that we have. So we will not be pursuing an additional round of early action projects at this time. At this point, they also wouldn't be early action projects with our cap really coming to a draft stage. So I wanted to share that update with you all. We're still continuing to go out for grant funding, but we really are focusing on getting these projects done to the best of our ability to use out these funds. And an exciting grant update, we just found out that we were successful with the Caltrans Sustainable Communities Grant that we applied for way back in February. Just received the notice, received about $300,000 to do a countywide ZEV action plan in partnership with Yochadehi, UC Davis, the cities, and Yolo Transportation District. So we had our kickoff meeting with Caltrans last week. That project will start. We can start using funds in January. And so they're moving along. We really are making progress on these. And I think a lot of really great things came together with funding for these two early action projects in the last few weeks. So excited to share those with you. And I think that concludes my staff announcements.
Thank you. And before I turn it to the my fellow supervisors, congratulations on the two grants. So the ARP funding and the Caltrans Sustainability Communities Grant as well. And on that note, I think on behalf of the Commission, I would like to thank the Board of Supervisors and the staff for supporting our work and also making it possible for us to have that funding. Commissioners, you have any follow-up questions, comments for the staff? Commissioner Reed?
I want to congratulate you for this work on grant acquisition. Grant acquisition is huge and extraordinarily competitive throughout the state of California. So the fact that you've been able to pull these off is really amazing. And the Caltrans partnership grant, I think, will go a long way. The sustainability partners involved in that in creating the integrated coordination that we need in this county to make the CAP a success. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Anyone else?
Just want to echo
Yes.
Commissioner Reed's, sentiment of gratitude and excitement. This is really exciting for, the support of the work that we're doing, but also just excited because I feel like we don't know everything that, this could entail for our county. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Serena. At this point, I think I want to open the floor to the public. Do we have any public comments, reaction from members of the public or from a supervisor representative? No? Okay. So the good news is we're still right on time. As a reminder, we have a pack schedule agenda today. So if there is no additional comment on this topic, we're closing agenda item number 5. And we are moving on to agenda item number 6. This is an update on the technical advisory committees. We're going to start with the equity and engagement TAC. Commissioner Serena?
Yeah, thank you. So we've been pretty busy with the equity and engagement work. We interviewed so many community partners and we were able to really decide and invite those community partners on. In our TAC, we've also been discussing ways to cross-pollinate efforts between the Equity and Engagement and Natural Lands Working Group by including the voice of the farm worker when speaking to farmers. So really starting those conversations. And again, really trying to be careful about not violating the Brown Act, by having these conversations. So we have asked for guidance around that. And so Micah here met with me, and so it's just me and her, and we exchanged notes. And one of the things that we thought would be best for this work is incentivizing efforts to really have these conversations with our target groups, which would be farmers and farm workers. And how does that look like? We're still figuring it out. So we understand that there is limitations around incentivizing these. So we're interested in proposing a potential focus group and presenting these conversations as a focus group. So we're still in the beginning conversations of that. So that's one of our updates. And of course, with our outreach efforts, we've been tabling at farm worker events. We did some events in Knights Landing. Thank you for coming through, Julia, last minute. I don't know if Julia's here. Am I not seeing?
She's online.
Oh, hey, Julia. Thank you for showing up last minute and really being present at that event. Again, we are really trying to engage those unincorporated areas. So these events are really important to target. We have some, just some upcoming events that, again, there's another farm worker event. And so that is on the 6th here in Woodland. And so we're hoping to have a presence there as well. So there'll be more down the line in the agenda. So I'll wait till then. And that'll be it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Serena. I suggest that we listen to the Natural and Working Lands TAC update, and then we will have a conversation on those two topics.
Thanks.
So,
And we have Kate Reza from RCD on the line.
hi, Kate, we're listening.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you all. And we had a Natural and Working Lands Technical Working Group meeting on Friday of last week, and we went over the natural lands component of the CAP, and we provided feedback to DUDEC on the Natural and Working Lands Strategy Framework, which I believe Sarah Halterman's going to go into more detail on shortly. And we reported to the RCD is still working with our partners to try to get surveys distributed for agricultural input. And Heather is also conducting interviews of agricultural producers. So far, we've distributed 1,508 surveys between the RCD's mailing list and partner mailing lists, and Heather has conducted 9 interviews with about another dozen to go. And we have been slowing down on that a little bit because the farmers have been very busy. It's harvest season for a lot of the producers. So that's my update. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you much, Kate. Any questions from our commissioners? So I think for Adelita and for you, Kate, I'm wondering in terms of timeline, the overall timeline that you've given your groups, where do you think you're standing? Are you feeling good about the progress you've made so far? Or are there resources needed in terms of, to help you move the process further along or more smoothly?
Our biggest constraint is agricultural producers having the time to respond to the survey. It turned out that the survey was ready at a time when agricultural operations were ramping up. And so that's our biggest constraint right now, is people having the time to either be interviewed or sit and complete a survey.
Thank you. Yes.
I would agree with that. We have had lots of survey responses, but we really want to target the farm worker community, the farm workers. And as Kate mentioned, they are all working around the clock and harvesting crops. And so again, we really want to make sure we don't miss the opportunity to engage them. And again, we're hoping that we can propose a focus group with, a handful of them if that's the case.
And so my very last question, and then I'll open the floor. Can you tell us about the attendance of the events in Knights Landing? I'm just trying to get a sense of what the outreach was like. People you talked to.
Yeah, it was very well attended. Julia, who is on the line, was at the table. I was a part of the program itself, so I wasn't directly at the table, but of course I said hello to everyone and encouraged them to visit our table. But I will pause there and let Julia know, but it was a very well-attended event by the Knights Landing community.
Julia?
Yeah, I would second Adelita's comments. It was a really good turnout. It definitely got busier as the day went on. We had a lot of questions from the community, just about, there was a lot of interest in the natural and working lands, solutions and carbon sequestration strategies. So we had a good amount of people that were interested in taking the survey and interested in finding out ways that they can learn more, because a lot of this seems like new information to them. So, but it was a really well attended event. So yeah, it was a good turnout. So really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you both for the input. So I did ask that because we have put quite an emphasis on in-person events. So it's nice to hear about how it's going. I would like to open it to public comments. Do we have any comments from members of the public on this item? Online, in person? I don't see any. Last round for our commissioners. Okay, so I think that we are closing agenda item number 6, and we are ready to hear an introduction of our first 4 CAP community outreach partners. So that's agenda item number 7. We are going to learn who these partners are, and ahead of time, I would like to congratulate all of them and thank them for joining us on the drafting of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan for Yolo County. So I think, Adelita, you're also the one leading this topic.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, one, as I mentioned in our TAC update, we've been really busy interviewing, and we are so happy to be at this point today where we can introduce you to our community outreach partners. Again, very excited. Our community outreach partners will be supporting the county and the commission throughout the CAP development and implementation process. Our equity and engagement TAC reviewed applications and conducted interviews, and we are excited to kick off these partnerships. But before introducing community outreach partners, I wanted to remind folks about what role entails, what their role will entail. All of the partners you will meet in a minute submitted applications throughout May and June of this year. Our application explained that we were looking for community-based partnerships and our community-based organizations to build and maintain relationships with the community in the unincorporated areas of Yolo County. So throughout this CAP development and implementation process. So by working with our CBPs and CBOs that are known and trusted within the community, the county hoped to better center equity in the outreach and engagement process and ensure that the CAP prioritizes strategies and programs that meet greatest needs of our community. So in attendance, we had our first partnership meeting this past week, and we had a full meeting. It was so exciting just to see like a room full. So that was very exciting. Everyone attended our E&E TAC meeting. And so again, these are open to the public. If you are interested in hearing about this process, you can attend. Just look online to the website. So yes, they'll be helping with tabling events, convening our communities in this conversation, and providing input on the equity and engagement strategies used for community and outreach. So we're gonna have our community partners introduce ourselves. And I just wanna make sure that we have who had confirmed in attendance that they would be here. Is everyone that confirmed? Okay, I do see.
And I think we are currently the only folks who Center for Land-Based Learning, I do not believe is in attendance right now.
Okay.
I'd be happy
So-
to provide an
Sure.
update on them.
So our first.
Oh, never mind, Jeannie's here.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure before I start out. So one of our community-based outreach partners is Center for Land-Based Learning. Should I just go down the list, Kristen, and then allow for them to, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go for it, but also remind us how much time we have for each person in terms of introduction.
How much?
If we could have each of our partners share like a 3 to 5 minute intro
Sure.
and what there'll be their ideas for how they're going to be approaching this partnership.
Yeah.
And then, Adelie, did you want to read who the 4 partners
Yeah.
are, and then they can introduce themselves one at a time?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're excited to introduce our 4 partners, one of them being Center for Land-Based Learning, Cool Davis, the Davis Odd Fellows, and Yolo Food Bank. And just to remind you all, we have one more spot that we're currently interviewing to fill. The applications were submitted, and we will be conducting interviews later this week. So I'm going to pause there and allow for our Center for Land-Based Learning rep give a little bit of background on their organization.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting us, and I'm thrilled to be here representing the Center for Land-Based Learning. My name is Jeannie Werka. I'm an ecologist by training, and I head up a program we have at the Center for Land-Based Learning called our Farm and Climate Program. And we are actually one of the early action projects. We have a project we're working on with the county called the Yolo Carbon Farming Partnership. It's a effort together with the Yolo RCD and the Carbon Cycle Institute and Yolo Land Trust to increase the pace and scale of carbon farming and carbon farm planning in the county. So it's exciting to be doing that work. That work has a pretty significant outreach component where we will be working directly with growers to get them excited about carbon farm planning, and we'll be doing some trainings this coming up winter and spring for that. So we are relying on our partnership partners to do the outreach for that, and we will be reporting back to you how those workshops and trainings go. So a little bit about the Center for Land-Based Learning. We've been around for over 25 years. We are based in Yolo County. Our headquarters is just north of Woodland. And, but we do have, we are a statewide organization as well. We have programs in 27 counties throughout the state. And we sort of like to divide our description of our programs into youth-based programs and then also the adult programs. Our youth programs are really focused on high school age students. We have something called the Farms Leadership Program that engages high school students in sustainable ag and learning about sustainable ag as a career. And then we have a program called SLUES, which brings high school students out to properties that are doing some type of habitat restoration or climate-based work, including, planting hedgerows or doing riparian restoration. So both those programs have a climate impact, and we work directly with families that have students in high school. Our adult programs include, we have what we call the California Farm Academy, which has a beginning farmer training program, an apprenticeship program for farm people who want to become farm managers. And we are launching a new Spanish language version of that apprenticeship program. And we also have a farm business incubator program. So people who are interested in farming, they're ready to launch their business, can lease land at below market rates at one of our sites, either in Woodland or West Sacramento. And we provide the support and training, and they can use our equipment and things like that. So those are some of our programs working directly with farmers and ranchers. We were excited about this opportunity to be a community outreach partner because our farm and climate program really is excited to help the county reach its goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2030, which, as you all know, is in just over 6 years. So what we are doing so far is we're utilizing our own outreach networks to get the word out about the survey and also about the working lands survey. So we're getting that word out, and we will be utilizing, we have what's called the community food program, which is currently based in West Sacramento, although we just got funding to extend it to the Woodland area and the unincorporated areas around Woodland. So the community food program has a mobile farmers market that is scheduled, that goes to low-income communities and also senior centers, and offers fresh produce directly to those communities. So that's going to be a really important avenue of outreach to reach people about the CAP process. So I'll end there. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Jeannie, thank you for this introduction. So I think we're going to listen to all the introductions, and then we'll have follow-up questions at the very end. I would like also to remind everyone who is listening that you are welcome to support those efforts, sign up for the newsletters of the organizations, and they are always accepting volunteers. Jeannie, thank you again for joining us. We'll have questions in a few minutes. Next.
Thank you. So our next community-based partner is Cool Davis. Do we have a rep from Cool Davis here?
Chris Granger is online.
Hi, Chris.
Hello. I'm glad to join you. I was hoping to get there in person today, but it wasn't going to happen. So I'm glad we still have the Zoom in place. Cool Davis is really excited to be one of the hopefully 5 soon outreach partners. We've been working mostly in the city of Davis, but with partners in Yolo County as well since 2010, when the city of Davis finished their first climate action plan. We work with households to help them make changes in their individual lives. And more recently, we've been working with our partners on some ideas around what Tree Davis and Cool Davis are calling climate ready neighborhoods. Cool Davis has since probably about 2013 had 2 parts to it. One, what we like to call our coalition. It is made up of working groups and other partner organizations, and the purpose of the coalition is to mobilize around climate, and as well as to play with ideas together for making transformation. And on that part of the organization, we have folks focused on food and mobility and other aspects of working together. Our Interfaith Alliance for Climate Justice is a group of faith communities that have been working together, teaching each other and doing advocacy together on climate. And then the other part of our work has been what we call campaigns, and that's really very focused campaigns with specific goals to reach a certain number of households by a certain amount of time to get them to make certain changes in their lifestyle or in their homes or in their transportation habits. With this role as doing outreach. We've been doing a lot of different kinds of outreach in the Davis community over many years and developed a lot of different techniques and tools. And we're hoping in this process to offer whatever wisdom we have to other groups in the community around Yolo County, to be a resource to them, to be part of training, and also maybe the creation of new resources to bring not just tools in the toolbox, but maybe other kinds of financial resources to the table. And we're also hoping that with our work, we will reach some neighborhoods that have not traditionally been connected as well, both immediately around Davis, but anything we can do to support what other outreach groups are doing to reach very, kind of marginalized and vulnerable neighborhoods. We would really like to be able to support that process. So I think I'll leave it at that and welcome your questions.
Thank you, Chris. And again, we'll be waiting for questions till the end. Our next community-based partner is the Davis Odd Fellows. And yeah, Larry. Yeah, we have a representative here. I'll let him introduce himself and talk a little bit about their organization.
Thanks for everybody being here. My name is Larry Gunther. I am the Noble Grand of the Davis Odd Fellows. We got our charter in 1870 before the city of Davis became a city. And we currently have over 380 members, many of whom are very motivated to get the word out and to do something about climate change. And we're hoping to use our skill set we throw a lot of events. I'll just say that we have a lot of events. So event planning and and carrying out events is something we've done a lot of. And we have members living all over Yolo County. So using our networks, using our skill set and our resources, one of the main is our biggest resource is our people, but also we have a lodge hall to throw events. So we are looking forward to using that and to helping get the word out for the Yolo Cap and trying to help the county create as good a plan for action and adaptation as we can make it all together. There's going to be a lot of adaptation that needs to happen, and that's going to take a lot of action. So trying to get the word out and get people behind this. I'm guessing the farmers are very aware of what's going on, but getting their feedback is super important, as well as a lot of other people throughout the county who are impacted and whose voices aren't heard as often. So reaching out to those people is something we're really going to try and do a lot of. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Larry. And last but not least, we have the Yolo Food Bank. And I believe I'm just going to go ahead and, so Yolo Food Bank could not be with us tonight, but they're excited to be partnered with our efforts. As you all are familiar with the work that the food bank does, if you're not, their mission is to advance food and nutrition security through their programs and through supporting their partner organizations. They do this and help create an equitable and sustainable local food system by connecting individuals and families to healthy, high-quality foods and resources, collaborating with community partners to deepen outreach and address food needs, and convening leaders in the community to assess progress and plan collective actions. Their impact reach within the county, particularly in working with vulnerable and underserved populations, is huge. A few things to highlight. Approximately 9,600 households receive food assistance from Yolo Food Bank programs every month. There are 145 food access events per month in Yolo County. They serve food insecure populations in Gwenda, Dunnigan, Knights Landing, Esparto, Madison, Clarksburg, and unincorporated Yolo County, as well as the cities of Winters, Davis, Woodland, and West Sacramento in their Eat Well Yolo distributions. So I can't say enough good things about all of our partners, and it's going to require lots of creativity, getting the word out and engaging our unincorporated areas. And I think we have like a really solid team now. Very excited to roll out our efforts. Again, the deadline for our community input survey has been extended to the 30th. We're excited to push that out, utilizing their networks and their partnerships, and of course, just all the wonderful work that they're already doing. If anyone has questions regarding, any of these partnerships, now's a good time.
While you're thinking of your questions, someone put a comment in the chat. As a reminder, please raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment, because the problem with the chat is that it's not accessible for people who cannot see it, and it's not visible during when people watch the recording afterwards. So Kristen, would you please read it?
The comment is from Alfred Melbourne. He also raised his hand, and so we can also take it as a public comment when the time comes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So fellow commissioners, any questions, feedback on everything you heard so far? I don't see any reaction. So I would like to thank the sustainability team for reviewing all the applications. Again, congratulations to our outreach partners, and thank you so much for lending your network, your resources, and your time to in helping us make the Yolo County CAP a success and helping us achieve our goals. We're going to take public comments at this time.
First public comment is from Alfred Melbourne.
Alfred, you have about 3 minutes. Thank you for joining us today. Feel free to state any affiliation you'd like us to know about. Thank you.
Yeah, greetings. My name is Alfred Melbourne, founder and director of Three Sisters Gardens. We're a Native Indigenous-led 501c3 supporting the actual High Promise Youth in Broderick and in Sacramento County. We do that with the 4 urban farms we operate, where we show them how to grow, harvest, and distribute organic vegetables. Last year, we donated 22,000 pounds in a food desert. We're on track right now to at least do the same amount, if not more. We would like to actually participate in the process. And of course, I apologize. I should thank all the panelists and the hosts for convening this and doing an amazing job. We actually just found out about this, I think it was last week. And we would be happy to participate and join as a 5th partner, adding our experience and love for our community when it comes to sustainability and future growth for next 7 generations. So thank you to the folks that did apply and it got accepted. Amazing programs that you guys have. Of course, if we have the opportunity, we will submit an application and try to get on board with you guys so that we can do our part. Thank you very much.
Alfred, thank you so much for, again, I know you're a very busy person and so is your staff. We really appreciate you being here today and expressing support and also highlighting the work that Three Sisters Garden is doing. Do we have any additional public comments?
Yes, we do. And Alfred, staff from the county will follow up with you directly via email after this meeting. And the next public comment is from Scott Stewart.
Good evening, commissioners. I would like to, first of all, introduce myself, Scott Stewart from Davis, part of Yolo Climate Emergency Coalition, also an ally for Fridays for Future. Just to ask how, or to consider how it is that the outreach efforts are being coordinated with the newly onboarding of the outreach partners, and how is that going to be how does that complement one and another? And I'm not asking for an answer, just asking for the consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for your comment. we are just starting the process. We've had one meeting with our community-based partners, and it's going to require lots of creativity, but we really want to emphasize that with their partnership, we're going to be utilizing their networks to get the word out about our community input survey and any further engagement work that we'll be tackling. And of course, we are open to any suggestions or ideas. This is uncharted territory when it comes to the work that we're doing, but we are also really good at, as Larry mentioned, holding events and talking to our communities and our neighbors and really engaging folks. And of course, we want to make sure that we're doing it effectively. So we'll keep everyone posted here. So please stay tuned.
Okay, thank you. I want to let you know that we have reached our time limit on this item, but again, one last call. Any comments from commissioners or from the public on this item before we close? Commissioner Reed?
I just want to add to Commissioner Serena's comment on the coordination with our partners. Each of our partners has a unique relationship throughout the county, and in addition, they have facilities where that they've offered.
Get closer to mouth. Sorry.
What am I doing?
If you could get even closer, potentially.
Okay, sorry. Is it on?
Oh,
I'm not sure that it's on actually. Yeah.
It's green.
Okay. I apologize. Just project.
Project. Okay. So each of the partners has offered their facilities as potential locations for future community conversations that are planned by our staff and by the commission. And so as we allocate according to who can do what best in what location, and talk about how we're going to go about organizing those events, they will be central to that conversation and that implementation.
Appreciate the additional feedback on that. So thank you all again for the time spent on this item. Congratulations once again to our community outreach partners. Also, it goes without saying, but just as a reminder, there are multiple ways to engage with the commission and to be a part of this process. So the staff is always available to answer questions. The technical advisory committees are always welcoming members of the public input as well. So I think we're going to close our time on agenda item 7. Let's move on to agenda item 8. We're going to have a discussion on the Yolo County food system and connection to consumption-based inventory. So Kristen will give us an overview, and then we'll turn it over to the DUDEC team.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. And thanks to our speakers who are here. Michael Hendricks is joining us online. Marissa Jeweler, the Integrated Waste Management Director of Integrated Waste Management, and then Grace Kaufman, a project lead at Valley Vision, is here. This conversation has been requested several times by the commission over the past year. And the idea being that we have the timing is really right for this as we get into the structure of our plan, and very soon at the next meeting, starting to discuss strategies for our climate action and adaptation plan. We thought it was important to have a conversation around the role that the food system plays in the consumption-based inventory. This is something that Michael Hendricks is going to be starting with. And then to understand the work that's already happening in this space. We don't want to duplicate efforts with our climate action adaptation plan. We want to build on the great work that's happening in the county. And so Marissa is going to share information about the Integrated Waste Management Department. Our landfill is incredible, and we should maybe talk about doing a landfill tour if that's something that we haven't done. It's incredible. But there's so many programs there that we can learn from, and we want to make sure that those are integrated into the strategies that we're talking about in the CAP. And then likewise, Grace is going to talk about the effort to develop the Yolo Food Hub, which is a new model for how we approach our food system here in the county, and how we create space for small producers in particular to have a foothold in our Yolo County economy. And so really excited for this conversation. I think similarly, let's maybe one or two urgent questions if there is one for our speakers as we go through, but want to make sure we have plenty of time at the end to have a conversation with all of our speakers, because I think this is a dynamic conversation and all of these topics are really linked. So with that, I can pass it off to Michael Hendricks, who will be giving the first presentation of this item.
Thank you. And I believe you have a PowerPoint I'd like you to bring up, if you don't mind.
Yes, of course. Sorry. One
That's all right.
second.
It helps to see the numbers and the charts as we talk through these things.
My apologies. I had not pulled it up. I thought you were sharing. That is on
Oh.
me. Give me 1 minute or 30 seconds. Okay.
All right, good evening. So my name's Michael Hendricks. I'm on the DUDEC team assisting the county in developing the climate action and adaptation plan. And one of the things we've done is develop a Yolo County specific consumption-based inventory narrative. We call it a narrative because we're wanting to focus mostly on the purpose and not get into the numbers too much, but we will get into them here when we're talking about food. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the purpose is to provide households within the county information on their carbon footprint and how they can reduce it. It informs everyone on how their use of and consumption of various modes of transportation, housing, food, goods, and services contribute toward the cumulative GHG emissions we have, and putting that into context with the other various inventories. And if you'll notice, food is the second highest in percentage of all of the inventories within the consumption-based inventory. Transportation being the highest. Food is roughly 340, almost 341 metric tons per year that the county in emissions from the consumption of food. So next slide. So what goes into a food emissions inventory? First, there's planting and harvesting emissions. This involves the various processes of growing and nurturing plants till they're ready to harvest. The main emission sources, of course, are the farm equipment, irrigated water, and the energy it's required to transport that irrigated water, fertilizers, and the like. If you're dealing with livestock, that would be the birthing and raising of livestock up until they're ready to go to food lots for processing. So food processing emissions include sorting, washing, cleaning, and the other processes involved. If we're talking about livestock, it's butchering and packaging, those kinds of things. This also includes if it's frozen food, freezing, those kinds of things. So food transport, pretty easy to understand. It is the transport of food from the processing centers, from the farm to the processing centers, and then from the processing centers to wholesale distributors and retail sales. And then the end of this is a life cycle process, is food waste and disposal, which I think we're going to be hearing after my presentation, details about that. Next slide. So looking closely at food, these are the basic 5 categories that food is divided up into. So meat includes beef, pork, lamb, poultry, eggs, and seafood. Other foods, kind of a catch-all. It includes beverages, condiments, oils, sweeteners, and processed foods. And when you think of processed foods, think of Twinkies or candies, things like that that have a lot of artificial flavoring and coloring and emulsifiers and those sorts of things. Dairy includes milk, butter, and cheese. Cereals is pretty inclusive. It includes all grains and flour, baked goods, tofu, roasted nuts, and nut butters. So that makes up how the food is categorized in the consumption-based inventory. Now, I want to focus on meat because it is the highest emission source of all the foods. It's at roughly 26%. Other foods is at 25, but we can go a lot of different directions with other foods, and I want to focus on meat because there are some particular aspects to meat that make it a high emissions producer. And I put things in pound for pound so that you could easily see a comparison. Normally, we calculate CO2 emissions in metric tons, but I really wanted you to see it in pound per pound. So 1 pound of beef equals 31 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalents. 1 pound of chicken is 2.5 pounds. And compared to that, wheat is 1.14 pounds. One of the reasons for the high GHGs associated with beef is that grazing and feedlots require an amazing amount of acreage of alfalfa and grazing lands per cow. It's roughly 243.3 acres per cow to feed a cow and get it ready for butcher. The same amount of land would produce over 500,000 pounds of harvested wheat. So have that in mind. Meats compared to grain is also higher in transport emissions because cows are first shipped to feedlots to fatten them up and then transported to be butchered and then transported again, refrigerated as meat to wholesale meat distributors before being transported refrigerated to retail markets and sales. And I emphasize refrigerated because there's a lot more emissions associated with transporting refrigerated foods than there is just dry lot foods like wheat. By comparison, harvested wheat is transported to a granary for processing and then shipped to retailers for markets. So you can see the simplicity as far as emissions go that grains have compared to meats. And this is why meats are such a high proportion of the food based inventory. And if you move on to the next, so some pretty simple and logical recommendations. Try and buy local foods when possible. This reduces the transport emissions associated with foods. Eat more grains, fruits, and veggies. This is what our doctors have been saying anyways. And eat less red meat. Personally, I love steaks, but I have them on a special occasion. I'm not a vegetarian. Just eating red meats occasionally and going more for the other foods is a great way of reducing your carbon footprint associated with food while also keeping yourself healthy. So that's the presentation, and I'm ready for questions.
Commissioner Britton.
Yeah, that was very clear, and thank you. Just one question. I didn't see it, and I suspect it was in there anyway. The direct emissions from, let's just say, livestock, for example, weren't listed in your bullet points. So the methane that is directly emitted by cattle in there, I think mostly burps, but also some flatulence. And then also the methane that is produced in the feedlots and the waste pools. Does that enter your calculations in the same way that the other energy costs do?
Yes. So that would be considered in the birthing and raising of livestock.
Okay, that's where I thought
one of the primary sources of emissions, by the way, and it's not just beef, but also dairy, chickens as well, and other livestock. So
And this came up in the last meeting a couple of months ago, and I think, I don't remember the exact where it went, but rice is fairly expensive in terms of methane emissions from the pools that it's grown in. And that's also included in the grain category.
it is. Although rice is a small portion of the total grains, it's a huge production within Yolo County and Sutter
Indeed.
County, I would say. One of the main reasons, so getting into particular foods, you can really dive into where the emission sources are. Rice in particular, the main sources of emissions include methane that's produced during growing rice, and that has to do with the anaerobic conditions that you have in the wet fields. And then also in processing rice, the dryers and huskers use natural gas. So that is the second highest source of emissions associated with rice. So of all the grains, rice is way and above the highest emitter within grains, that is. Still
Thank you
lower
very
than
much.
meat, by the way.
So, Michael, I thank you for answering those questions. So Commissioner Pelayo Alvarez also wanted to ask a question. And then as a reminder, I will ask my commissioners, unless it's super urgent, if we could try to have the conversation with all of the speakers at the end, because otherwise you're going to notice that we get so, of course, into topic, but the same item has 2 additional presentations. Is that okay, or can we listen to Pelayo and then we'll take it to the floor again? Is that okay? Commissioner Alvarez, we're listening.
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Michael, for the presentation. My question is about the sources of the data that you use. Are these sources Yolo County specific, or are they global?
They're Yolo County specific as far as the consumption of food. Some of the assumptions built into those are California average. So the transport of food-based emissions are a California average. We got the data through, is it Cool Planet? Out of Berkeley is where the data came from. So we use the same methodology that the San Francisco Bay did in developing their consumption-based inventory. And in there, like I say, as an example, electricity as far as energy use is a California average, and then fuel use, those kinds of things. So it is a little lower than the US average and certainly lower than the global average, but we were not able to get that kind of data granular enough to be specific to Yolo County and the fuels and electric grid, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Michael. Commissioner Bennett, we'll take your comment or question, and then we will look at item 8B regarding our landfill.
Okay, thank you. Talking about what is Yolo County specific on the meat, I think there's some needing to look at what livestock where, and certainly and to support the local farmers who maybe are using different methods than the overall average. So your figure about how much wheat could be raised on the same land that's taken to grow alfalfa, for example, to feed cows in feedlots, that our hills here where that ranchers use to graze is not suitable for raising wheat. It's got way too much erosive susceptibility. And so you're being able to raise a food product on land that otherwise wouldn't be productive probably for food consumption. And then especially looking towards something like prescribed grazing or what they're doing in the Marin Carbon Project, where you can use that to build up your carbon sequestration in the rangelands. I think we need to be and where I'm from in Cape Valley, the farmers, they grass feed their cows. They're not sending them off to feedlots. So to the degree that we can help people understand and distinguish between livestock that is raised in a way that's sustainable and supports the carbon goals versus is coming from feedlots and is the cheapest per pound that you can get, I think is important for us, especially in bringing along some of the farmers even on our natural and working lands committee who are ranchers.
You bring up some really good points, and in particular, why you should buy local, particularly with red meat. And you're right, we did not get into particulars of like what is suitable to grow in Yolo County in figuring out the translation if you went more towards grains than meat. We averaged that out. So the Natural and Working Lands Group, I believe, is coming up with some sustainable farm practices, exactly what you're talking about, that would reduce that carbon footprint associated with raising various crops, including livestock.
Okay, Commissioner Bennett, thank you very much for that excellent and strong point reminder, and Michael for your reply. So let's look at agenda item 8B. I'm welcoming Marissa Jeweler. How do you pronounce your last name?
That was perfect, Jeweler.
Okay.
Well done.
Despite the accent. Thank
Yeah.
you. So I'm just going to give the title. This is a presentation from Yolo County Integrated Waste Management Division regarding the State Bill 1383. You have the floor, unless Kristen wants to add a few words before you go.
No, go ahead. We are testing out a new sharing of video and audio, and we'll make it work.
We will make it work. Thank you so much for this invitation to present. As Krista knows, I love any opportunity to speak on the good work that we're doing out at the landfill, which just doesn't stop at the walls of the landfill. We do so much out in the community. And so I do have a little bit hybrid of a video today. I'm going to give you a small tour of the landfill from the board chambers today, but also a PowerPoint presentation on some of the additional programs that we are responsible for in implementing SB 1383. And so that does fall on the integrated waste management staff. And I don't know if you're able to bring that up first. That would be great. Or you want to do the video first or the PowerPoint?
What would you prefer?
Let's go to the PowerPoint. I wanted to keep this on this topic of food. One of the most integral parts of SB 1383 is the edible food recovery component, which is a foreign concept, maybe not to the folks in this room, but it definitely is to the folks that we have been out in the community, knocking on doors, right? Talking to the grocers, talking to every food pantry and the Yolo Food Bank, who's also our partner. You can go to the next slide there. And we were the very first and only in California to fully negotiate funding and contracts with our food pantries to target all 40 tier 1 generators. So a tier 1 generator is a major grocer that has a substantial amount of food waste that they are landfilling and putting in their dumpsters behind their grocery stores. That is not just something that could be composted, but it is still edible. So that may be hard to believe, but edible food ends up in a dumpster and gets landfilled. And so we spent the last year to implementing this program, and we're very, very happy to say that we have recovered over 80,000 pounds of additional food in our first year, which is a huge feat, understanding where we came from, where this was a foreign concept to folks. So there are those individuals that have always donated to, say, the food bank, but there are grocery stores that didn't even know that this is something that they could do. So one of our partners, I am responsible for the unincorporated portion of the county, was we first approached the Esparto Valley Market, and everything went in their trash dumpster. It wasn't even making it into the compost bin that they were paying for. It just went straight to trash. It was re-educating staff about how to recover that food and then do so in a safe manner. So we held stakeholder meetings. We created these edible food generator posters that are in the back of all the stores. We have them in their freezer boxes, and all the walk-in freezers and refrigerators, so that the staff that's at that market, for example, example, knows exactly what is safe to recover. And then we have food recovery boxes, and we've partnered with the Countryside Church in Esparto. So we tried to make their carbon footprint as small as possible to go from the grocer directly to those in need. And so that is what we're continuing to do across the county. And so this is one of my favorite programs because as Cal Recycle would tell you, and the Yolo Food Bank is our partner, but food banks across America with Feeding America partnerships, we are the only ones that successfully created this funding mechanism to make it all happen. So very excited. We can go to the next slide. This one is really important because I do have a lot of like-minded folks in this room, which was really exciting to come present to you today. But as you probably have heard, if you are out there surveying and talking to people in the community, not everybody believes climate change is actually happening. Not everybody believes that these programs are necessary, or that their actions at their home and their business really can make a difference. We heard from so many people that felt like they were doing good things for the environment because they took their bottles and cans in for redemption. And that's where it stopped for them. There was no composting of food waste, no recycling of other materials. And so this piece here is something you guys are very well aware of. But for us, this has been the key educational tool, is to explain to folks that when you buy your food, right, and you put that food waste in your pail and the truck picks it up, right, and it goes to our compost facility, that it gets turned back into compost, which right, can be used to then regrow the food that we go and buy. And this was a big missing link for our community to understand that connection. So we did a lot of things. One, we made sure that over 4,000 homes got compost pails, free compost pails delivered to their doorstep in Knights Landing and Clarksburg, anywhere that we could go. And then we supply unlimited bio bags to all of our residents because it's like my teenagers, right? They give you lots of excuses why they can't do the right thing. So we come up with the solutions. One of these solutions was we will provide ongoing supply of these bags to deal with vector issues. That was one of the #1 complaints on why we couldn't recover food and we couldn't compost, was people didn't want their bins to smell or have vectors. I am a prior master gardener, so I could go into that in detail with them, but sometimes they just want the thing, right? And free speaks volumes when you use the word free. We do also have an at-home compost exemption because we are very rural. And this is something I do think that we might have missed the mark on with SB 1383, is truly understanding the rural community, and that many people are already doing the right thing out there, and they're not getting credit for it, right? And we're like, here's a cart, you've got to cram it into this little container, and one size doesn't fit all. So we created this program. It'll probably morph over the years, but that is something that is unique to Yolo County that not everybody is doing. They are just blanket with cart deliveries. We added this component of education by finding funding to provide buses, paid buses for the rural students that are in Esparto and Knights Landing, out at Plainfield, to get to our landfill and really experience what is happening with all of this. So please spread the word about that. We also have free compost giveaway till the end of October for all Yolo County residents. And then we do free compost for any school garden. And it's really so that we can get out there and educate them. My last piece on this slide is about flip the lid. And that is what I spent this morning doing, educating and training some of our new staff. A component of SB 1383 is to go to everybody's home and flip the lids on your carts and check to see if the things are in the right containers. And so some people are finding this quite humorous, but it is an important aspect of the program, and it's not meant to penalize anybody. We leave good tags too. Sometimes you'll say past inspection, good job, and staff's leaving a smiley face. But sometimes we have to let them know, like your styrofoam cup of noodles should not have ended up in your green lid compost bin, right? And while we do a lot of education, just like a variety of our divisions within our department, blanket education sometimes leads to misinformation, right? If you're not the person who ever buys cup of noodles, right, you might just pass up that flyer and not understand it. So we really want to give that message to the person who needs the behavior corrected. So that's a really important piece. All right. So this next slide is going to take us to our video. Some of you may know that over the course of the last 10 years at the landfill, we have had an anaerobic composting system in place just to deal with our immediate needs here in Yolo County. But SB 1383 made this much more global. So we're going to watch a quick 4-minute video here so you guys can go to the landfill and see what we've been doing the last 24 months.
Okay, it's not. Okay, so it's not letting me do the audio through here. I'm going to cast it through my microphone. If everyone can just be very quiet. And this has worked before. We're
Would
going
it
to
be
give it
better
a go.
for me to explain what's happening?
Let's give it a shot. I think it's going to work.
Arriving at the scale house, each load of waste is inspected.
Sounds very hip.
Seems like a good reason to come to the landfill for a tour. That's right. We're saving ourselves. I absolutely can present this without the video.
I'm so sorry. I will send the video out to everybody in the meeting notes. Not working.
We'll continue.
I'm
That
sorry.
is, no, it's fine. So we had about 50,000 tons of capacity to serve our needs at the anaerobic compost facility. And we soon realized, as part of the issues that we were finding meeting with the grocers and the businesses, that one, this was not enough capacity. So we built just the opposite, which was aerobic. So it's a CASP system, covered aerated static pile composting. So it's like traditional windrow composting. That facility has 182,000 tons of capacity. We opened in July of last year, and we are already out of space. So the good news is people are composting. The bad news is we're already serving a lot of jurisdictions in Northern California, and they need more infrastructure. So one of the things that I strive to do, though, in the bigger picture of climate change is really get folks up and running and then find them that alternative. So we have organics coming all the way from like Palo Alto. We're getting Sacramento County and city and all over the place, which is great. We're very happy that's not ending up in a landfill, but at some point we'd like their organics to stay closer to their home, right? That's the end goal. And so that facility is at capacity, and why it's really important for this discussion with food and how it's all connected is that we found that there is so much food waste out there that needs to get diverted from landfills, both edible and non, that we ended up opening a depackager, which you'll see in the video when you watch that or come out for a tour, that there's large businesses, and I'll just use a random example like Costco. If you go in Costco, there's bins for people to separate. There is not enough staffing to monitor and keep all of those, correct. They come with large compactors and roll-off bins filled with food waste every day. And if you can imagine, there isn't somebody that can take the plastic wrap off every head of lettuce or take the, plastic and rubber band off every floral arrangement that didn't sell. And so our depackager is one of the key components to making SB 1383 work, is that these large generators of food can bring those to the landfill. we do all the processing and removing of those plastics and then send the finished clean food, right, over to the CASP where it actually will get composted. And that is not something that most jurisdictions in the state have implemented yet. So I really pride ourselves on all of the different programs that we have implemented to kind of respond to the industry, right? We can't just say because there's a law in place, all of a sudden everybody just understands what to do and we're doing it in accordance with the law. It's really beyond that. It's, are we doing it in accordance with the law and we're making a good end product, right? That is good for agriculture and minimizing all of the discussion about microplastics, right? Is there a way to take that out before it gets there? So that's a really important piece of it. And you can go to the next slide, Kristen. So this is what I call going beyond. I have been in the waste industry 23 years now, and one of the interesting things that I have observed is that from a funding standpoint, right, we have brilliant ideas, but we always need money to implement them. We have spent probably the last 20 years receiving funding for recycling. We are now receiving funding for composting, but we haven't gone back to the top of that pyramid, right? Where first is waste reduction and reusing items, minimizing what you buy. If you don't need so many loaves of bread, right? Because they all end up going bad. Maybe the grocers will have to buy differently now that these laws are in place. So I throw this out here because this is one of the things that, you know, I say, when you can get a couple of like-minded people in a room together, you can accomplish a lot. And so we opened the Blue Barn out at the landfill just about 5 years ago, and we have already diverted 425 tons from our landfill just by educating people that you don't always have to go and buy new. And so it's just thinking a little bit bigger. And I think I've got one more slide in here. This extends it beyond food. Is so really looking at the bigger picture. We oversee all the stuff that's illegally dumped. We manage all that waste, and it's really looking at the fact that we have programs in place and they are running successfully. And so these were just some statistics that add to that. And did I have anything beyond this slide? Yes. So this is almost in all of my presentations because I'm a highly optimistic person, as Kristen knows. But I wanted you guys to see this number, 158,000 pounds of waste are going into our landfill just from Yolo County residents and businesses. Our goal by 2025 is to be down to 95,000. And so when you look at this data, we take such great pride in all the good work we do. We're out there doing education and outreach, but it is the reminder that we still have a lot of work to do. And so it is getting to each household, getting to each business and making them understand their impact. Because when we set our 2025 goals, which was prior to COVID, we were at 123,000 tons. And unfortunately, with COVID, people cleaned out their sheds and their garages and their barns, and they remodeled that bathroom that they never remodeled. And it has generated this huge increase in waste, not just in our county, across the state. And so we went backwards on really looking at our bigger picture and reducing our carbon footprint. And so this is my last slide, just to kind of leave that thought out there. We have a lot of work to do, and I would love to host you guys out sometime for a tour.
Wonderful. Marisa, thank you so much for what you shared. It's exciting. And yeah, I'm sure you have inspired many group tours to come. Are you able to stay until the end of this segment? So
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, we appreciate you sharing that information. I suggest, I'm sure you have burning questions. Adelita, is it okay if we listen, you know, we hear from Grace Kaufman regarding the Yolo Food Hub development? Yes? Okay. So Grace, it's great to see you in person, not in Zoom. Thanks for joining us today. So please give us an update on the Yolo Food Hub development. Again, please introduce yourself. I know who you are, but
Thank
to
you.
everyone.
Thank you everyone for having me here. My name is Grace Kaufman. I work at Valley Vision. For those of you who don't know, Valley Vision is a civic leadership nonprofit. We're based out of Sacramento, work primarily in this region around healthy communities, sustainable food systems, broadband, and workforce, among some others. So it's great to be here. Thank you. So today I am going to be talking about the Yolo Food Hub Network. There's a bunch of partners that I'll go over that are part of this network. But first, I wanted to start out and just saying what the Yolo Food Hub is and what the network will do. So the through ARP funding with Yolo County, we were able to purchase a facility that is located in Esparto. And that facility is over 100 years old. And the goal of New Season CDC, who's the nonprofit that acquired the property and received money from the county, is going to keep that original structure. Their goal is to really revitalize structures throughout Yolo County and in Esparto in particular. So that's what the goal is in the mission of New Season. The Food Hub facility will aggregate from local farms, so really supporting those small farms that aren't able to produce enough to meet large orders. As a Food Hub, those small orders can all add up into one large order that can go to schools, hospitals, jails, and other institutions throughout the county. The Esparto facility will pre-cool in store. So part of the process of once the food comes from the farm, it needs to cool down. And if you immediately put it into the freezer, it actually increases the temperature of the freezer. So there needs to be some pre-cooling that happens there. And then there is storage. Processing, and when I talk about it here, is going to be light cut and wrap. So just think of a giant head of broccoli that's cut into small florets. And that will really help schools, hospitals, and other institutions quickly prepare that food. And then also distributing produce really throughout Yolo County and the region. A lot of our food is produced here, but not a lot of our food is consumed here. So really the goal of this is to help increase that local consumption so that we can support our farmers and our local economy. Next slide. So what is the benefit of a Yolo Food Hub network? As you'll see in future slides, there are multiple food hubs right now operating in Yolo County that are part of this network. But as a coalition together, we can have a shared processing facility. Again, that value added process development that could be anywhere from cutting that butternut squash up. It's really difficult for small and individual farmers to make that kind of investment. So as a food hub network, we can provide that facility and service and infrastructure so that there can be more value added to the crops that are grown in this county. And then also shared cold storage and trucking and backhauling. So that will increase the volumes of the food that is going in the trucks and will also lower vehicles miles traveled within this region. So some of that has been like if, Yolo Food Bank provides a distribution up in North Yolo County, can they then bring food from the food hub back down to the food bank? And then also collaborative crop planning with buyers that leads to pre-commitments and pricing improvements. As an example, the Sacramento City Unified School District, they serve about 40,000 people, 40,000 students each day, and they do their crop planning and meal planning 1 year in advance. So having a network that has that bulk production power is really helpful for that local production or local demand that we have here. Next slide. So who is part of the Yolo Food Hub network? As you can see here, we do have Spork Food Hub, the Yolo Food Bank, and Capay Valley Farm Shop, which are operating food hubs right now. I know the Yolo Food Bank isn't technically a food hub, but I like to think of it as that because they do aggregate a lot of food and improve food security for the region. Next slide. So I know this is kind of hard to read and a little small, but I tried to do my best just to show the different components of the network because that is a little bit different from the facility that I'm going to focus on for the remaining portion of the presentation. But the Yolo Food Hub network basically functions as one hub partner within a broader network of food hubs, farmers, nonprofit partners, and other stakeholders in Yolo County. Through the support of the Resilient Cities Catalyst, we have been able to contract with AECOM, who is also the engineering and design firm that designed the Golden One Center. So really the goal is to make this facility as energy efficient and climate friendly as possible. And AECOM is AECOM is supporting that. Yeah, sorry, that's kind of, there's a lot there. And I'm happy to answer any other questions about some of the roles that we have within the hub. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the design of the Yolo Food Hub facility, the goal is really for this to be a sustainable building that is a model for the whole nation. Can we go to the next slide? So in terms of water, we want alternative water supplies, including reuse, rainwater, and stormwater, and then also energy efficiency and resilience, including rooftop canopy, PV, and battery storage systems. Part of the challenge that we have with keeping a building that that is 100 years old is that it is more energy intensive to maintain it and keep the temperature controlled in it. So that's just a factor that we have with this. Next slide. So the adaptation goals of the facility, the water related goals is to supply 100% of the project's water needs through captured precipitation or other natural closed loop water systems. There's also the goal to percolate some of the groundwater, some of the wastewater that we have back into the ground to help the water table there. And then on the energy related goal, we want 100% of the project's energy needs to be met through solar or on-site battery storage systems. Again, that will be a little complicated because there's only so much space there, and it's a very energy intensive operation to be able to cool everything and store everything and wash things. Next slide. So I know this is kind of hard to read, but this is the draft design that AECOM has created. So just to reference you a little bit, the blue buildings on there that you see are the buildings that currently exist on the property. The pink buildings is what AECOM is proposing that we build out, and this will all happen in stages. If we had $15–20 million, it could happen much sooner, but it's a process and we're working on it. We were able to acquire a USDA local food promotion program fund, grant funded. So that was able to help with a lot of the planning and design for this food hub. Next slide. So then this is kind of a bird's eye view of that same portion of the whole food hub site. So at the top left, we have that original building. So that will be where there's going to be some storage. And some of the arrows that you see there are also the truck routes. I just wanted to include that so you all could see that there's the purple line will go for trucks, and then the red line on the left, that'll be for the workers who are working at the hub. So we're trying to place solar everywhere we can in this area. So all of the parking will have solar on top of it. The original building will have solar. The new building will have solar. And then the transition zone between the cold storage and the dry storage will also have solar and PV. So I know that there's a lot there, but this is kind of the initial designs that we're thinking of with this space. And I will just say that typically, you do the plan and then you buy the property, but we were in a very unique situation with the funding that the county had. And so we kind of put the chicken before the egg there. Next slide. Yeah. So taking it to the next level, these are kind of like our goals to have at the facility: electric truck charging, low global warming potential refrigerant technologies, and then also an independent microgrid. So Esparto is in that area in particular is subject to a lot of public safety power shutoffs, and it's really important that all the food that is stored in that facility remains safe and edible if there's a public safety power shutoff. And with that, I am done. So thank you.
Grace, thank you very, very, very much. So I would like to give my fellow commissioners a few seconds to digest all of the information that we just had. And then also at this time, we are going to take questions, feedback, comments on all of the presentations that we've heard. So please feel free to have your questions ready. Kristen, did you want to add something before we open the floor? Okay, and Adelita, I sense that you're ready for us.
Thank you, NJ. My question is for Marissa. One, thank you for the presentation, very thorough. It's exciting to see what's happening in the Yolo County landfill. I was just there, taking a mattress box frame thing. So it was convenient, and I seen the blue barn. It's exciting, and also with all the work around SB 1383, I know that it's just a lot, and we're doing great things here in the county. With the outreach that you spoke about, my question was, is your material in Spanish? Is it in different languages for the different populations in the county? Is there, just because I'm aware of, folks that live in rental units that might not have access to the same kind of food disposal systems, is there a workaround that for those renters?
Those are great questions. So we do everything in English and Spanish. So that is kind of a given. And as part of SB 1383, they put some safeguards, like the majority of your population, you have to provide education in your 2 dominant languages. So there is no question about that. As far as apartments or kind of multifamily housing, we have rolled out at several locations. My kind of words of advice to folks is that please reach out to us. It is required. If you go to your apartment manager and they say, I don't care, I'm not interested, they don't get to say that anymore. SB 1383 has very specific language that says if anybody wants to do the right thing, we are to afford and give them that ability. And so we have had lots of struggles with multifamily where we've had tenants say, I don't have recycling. I don't have composting here at our complex. How do we get started? And then we send out our staff to meet with either the owners of the property or the apartment manager. And we have a whole kit that goes to they get a compost pail, they get their bio bags. We also have reusable recycle bags that fit under the sinks that can be easily hosed out. And it comes with all those educational materials. And so they get a kit so they can, even if they're on the 3rd floor of the apartment, they can carry those down to the big dumpster where the recycling is or the composting is. So we do want to continually let people know that it's okay to not take no for an answer in this case, right? We want them to reach out to us if their apartment complex is not cooperating.
Thank you for that answer. Would that come at a cost to the renter?
It could. So we have 2 different haulers in Yolo County. About 90% of our county is serviced by waste management, and the other 10% is by Recology, which is more in the Davis outskirts. And so there is a cost for service, right? The apartment owners are going to pay for a trash dumpster, they'd pay for a recycling dumpster, and they'd pay for an organics. So often they say no because they don't want to have to pay for those additional services. One of the things that we do as part of our onboarding with apartments in particular is we do a waste audit for them to help them shift, right? Like if you have a 6-yard dumpster filled with trash going 3 days a week, that's right, 6, 12, 18. We help them do the math. That's 18 cubic yards of waste. If you did a 6-yard for trash and a 6-yard for recycling and a 6-yard for organics, you have the same capacity and you've just given your residents the ability to put them in the right containers. And so sometimes it's re-educating them on how to figure out the cost, but ultimately the answer is yes. I think any cost that is borne by a business in some way makes its way down either to a renter or, a consumer if it's a store. But I don't know that necessarily it immediately equates to rent going up, for example, but there is a cost.
Marissa, thank you. And Commissioner Britt. Brittany, is your question for Marisa, for Grace, or for
is.
Michael?
Stay right here.
Very convenient.
Yes.
Thank you. Very nice. And I've always been impressed. I love the landfill. I get there as often as I can.
Thank
It's
you.
great. And but the question, I was really impressed by the numbers you had of the scale of your composting program. Truly impressive. And the question I have with numbers like that, I'm curious about where that compost then goes. And this connects actually with something that Michael Hendricks was talking about in terms of closing the loop and reducing the amount of fertilizer that Yolo agriculture uses. So how
I've
much
got
of
an
that-
answer for you.
I know you have an answer.
So
what fraction of that goes to replace nitrogen commercial fertilizers that are incredibly carbon intensive?
Yeah, so this comes out to annually, we are producing 50 to 60,000 tons of compost, and it's predominantly going all back to Yolo County agriculture. This last report, I report annually to the state, but then we have quarterly updates. And this past quarter was the first quarter where we actually started shipping out of Yolo County because we're producing more than our farmers and growers need. So we just started sending some to Placer and up to Butte. And so we're starting to reach out farther, but that is our average right now. Out of the 182,000 tons inbound, we're producing about 50 to 60,000 outbound of finished product.
You have a sense of how much of that goes to local organic farmers who then wouldn't be using commercial fertilizer versus conventional farmers who would then be replacing fossil fuel?
I don't have that data. I would say it's probably small right now because we do not have organic certification. So a lot of our organic farms want organic certified compost. And rightfully, that makes sense. Running this operation, we see what comes inbound. And so we are looking right now to become OMRI certified, but only for the green waste portion. So if you live in town and it's leaf drop season and there's lots of leaves that are coming in, just very clean material, we are looking to compost that material in separate cells. So those can be certified to go out to organic farms. And so that is probably very low right now, but we're on the path to having that in the very near future.
Thank you, Marisa. Commissioner Ullman, and then Commissioner White.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is extremely impressive. I believe it to be a model program for the rest of the state. And with that in mind, I think witness to that is the fact that other counties are bringing material here, and they wouldn't be doing that. It would really be cool if we could reduce the vehicle miles traveled by helping them implement their own programs. And with that in mind, and I'm sure you're aware of the report issued recently by the Little Hoover Commission about 1383 and the implementation steps and their recommendation that this needs to be looked at and overhauled. I guess my question is, if the best practices that you are implementing here in Yolo County were practiced statewide, would that be an issue? Or in your opinion, or would it be, are there unique problems? And I don't know whether that's beyond the purview of Yolo County, but it seems to me that if this isn't a model program, I don't know what is. It's just exemplary. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, we are so excited about the work that we are doing. I call them lessons learned, right? So we're very well aware. We have never taken exception to SB 1383. We understand the crisis that's ahead of us, and we can't just sit around for another decade and hope things will go right. So there's a part of those regulations that they're looking at where I wouldn't make changes, right? We still need to stay steadfast in implementation. What I will say is that we do need to more thoughtfully think about the unincorporated kind of rural communities where it could be more detrimental to send 3 trucks to go pick up 3 carts every single week from a climate perspective than what maybe did traditionally happen. Someone filled their horse trailer, they brought that to the landfill maybe every 4 months, And that was the only time that vehicle was on the road. So I have the very tough messaging of letting those folks know right now that the law is written in a way where I have to send 3 trucks and deliver 3 carts. And so I do think there are some changes that need to be made for the rural communities. And it doesn't mean, though, that we shouldn't stay on the same course. From my perspective, when we did a lot of education and outreach, we do have a lot of folks composting, but composting in their mind may mean burning. And we certainly don't have a burn ban in this county. So a lot of that material doesn't actually get composted. It just doesn't end up in a landfill. So I think there's a bigger discussion there that needs to happen with some of the Cal Recycle folks on how we tackle that issue.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Marisa. We'll
No,
take, do you have a follow-up?
One quick one here.
Yes.
I would like to talk to you later about looking at the pie chart for the city of Woodland, how we can shrink that piece of pie a little bit.
Great.
So stand by, I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Commissioner White?
Sorry, I'm really far away from the microphone now. 2 quick things. So first, Grace, that was awesome. And I'm going to follow up with you separately because I have some ideas for you. The other thing is really to think about us and our action plan, and maybe for Michael, is that part of that bill too says that cities and counties have to accept a certain percentage of that composted materials. And that percentage is ridiculously low. And so that's one of the things for us to think about in our action plan and the way we do it. The other part of it is even though we're turning it into mulch right now, we can also turn that green waste into fuel. And we did the math for one of our clients, the city of Reading, who is unfortunately every day hauling their organics to our landfill from Reading every day. So we did the math for them, and 1 tank of CNG would be their annual requirement for using compostable materials. So, you know, we can't completely discard how we use that renewable CNG that's coming from our garbage. And I know the landfill does that great now, and you're looking at an extension on your methane power plant. So there's that avenue too.
Thank you, Commissioner White. A minute. Do we online, will Pelayo want to react? I want to make sure he's not overlooked. That's why. No?
I don't see any comment from
Okay.
Pelayo.
Commissioner Dattel.
I have a question for Grace. To what extent do you already have thought out program evaluation that will really make clear what kind of climate benefits are going to come from the food hub? In other words, is Valley Vision, do they take on that research role, or do you contract with somebody from the university? What are the thoughts about how we're going to be able to measure the impacts of this wonderful project?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I wouldn't say Valley Vision is the right entity to do that because it's not in our expertise, but hopefully AECOM is finishing up their contract in the next couple of months. So hopefully out of that will come not only the carbon intensity of the different things that they're proposing, but also how much does that cost and what programs could support that technology. Because this is going to need to come from dozens and dozens of different programs to support what we're trying to achieve here. So the proper entity will probably be an engineering or designing firm. We're open to it.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Dattel. Grace, don't go anywhere. I have a quick question for you, and then I'll have one quick question also for Marisa. So I was wondering, I know you had, all of you, very little time to go into, all the details. So we didn't really touch on that. When it comes to the Yolo Food Hub, I'm very impressed, with the goal to be, to have like an independent microgrid, all of the solar panels that are, planned in terms of installation, keeping the 100-year-old barn. So we didn't hear about the maintenance plan. I'm sure there is one in place, but I was wondering, if that includes, training future, I want to say leaders into continuing with the work or learning how to either create a facility like that, maintain it so that they're able to go elsewhere and replicate it. So this is another way of asking if you have something in the work in terms of the, I want to say, workforce pipeline for that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Valley Vision, one of our impact areas is workforce development, and we are working with several partners throughout the region to look at what are the jobs of the future and what does that look like. And one of the programs that we're supporting is the SURF project, Community Economic Resilience Fund, which is a statewide program, and Valley Vision is the facilitator for this region. And really the goal of that is to look at what are those initiatives and planning of the future that will shape our economy and our workforce to be supported and resilient in the face of a changing climate, and also other economic disruptors like pandemics. So really, the Yolo Food Hub is an eligible project under that program because it will be supporting workforce development, and part of it is the fleet mandate that I'm sure you all are aware of. That's going to come in terms of agricultural equipment and operations, and there's not quite the technology there yet. And honestly, the cost is a little bit too expensive for farmers to implement that. So hopefully with something like the Yolo Food Hub network and that facility, it can be a place where people can come charge their equipment and be a refuge when they drop off their food.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Then a quick question for Marissa. And after that, I will take public comments. Any questions? Oh, and then Commissioner Reed. So Marissa, again, I think you have like a room full of fans, and I'm certainly one of them, all of you. I know that the Yolo landfill has several partners, but I was wondering if in the work that you're doing, you also are working with the unhoused community and with the community-based organizations serving, the unhoused. I'm thinking of the East Beamer Neighborhood Project, that just started and has about 100 beds. I'm not sure yet that they have a community garden and so on, but I also know there are several organizations who had Yolo helping with unhoused community, the night market in Davis, Paul's Place and so on. So all of those also are dealing with, either being the recipients of some of the things that are, being given, abandoned, and they also have to think about food recycling and where they're getting it from.
So the only personal connection that I do have an individual that I work with that comes to the Blue Barn thrift store and recovers a lot of the bicycles and refurbishes them and takes them out there so that they have a mode of transportation. Through our partners with the Yolo Food Bank, of course, the food that we are recovering through our SB 1383 efforts are making their way back. But the county directly doesn't have any contracts. We do encourage, though, we accept volunteers. We have a lot of work that we can offer folks, some positions paid and some truly are just volunteers and internships. And so there could be a potential for us to grow a program out there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. I am beyond excited about what you both presented. It's mind-blowing and very inspirational. So thank you both. I know how hard you've worked to make these accomplishments come to pass. So I have a couple of specific questions and then just sort of an observation about what we've heard today. Marissa, since you're up there, I wanted to ask if there's any part of your program that addresses gleaning from the farmers in terms of produce left on that land without harvest.
So not through our program currently. Doesn't mean that can't become a component of it. In the first year, we very specifically focused only on those required by law to participate. And we started there. And so I think that's a great opportunity to grow in that arena.
And with respect to West Sacramento, I I saw the number there. And so in terms of reducing that number presented for you, I think it might also be worthwhile, and you probably know this because you seem to know everything, that Russian language outreach may be appropriate in that particular community.
Yes, and so I do not directly oversee the City of West Sacramento's programs, but Tracy Kentstone and Susan Strand are the two that are heading up those efforts, and they do have it also in Russian in that community. Yeah, I do know that answer.
I figured you were ahead of me on that. Grace, on the solar, are you going to have battery storage at the site? And then the second question is, in your vision for that self-sufficiency, are you anticipating it all becoming a community-based grid?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So there will be storage on site. Right now, I think they can only get to 75% of the energy to be zero net energy. And part of that, again, is because we're using a 100-year-old building that is just less efficient than that new building that we're going to put up. But to your point too, we were thinking that this area could be a community location, a community resilience location. However, we think that inside where the community of Esparto is, next to the library and the school, there's the new Native American Health Center there that Yoshitihi tribe opened up. And then there's also the Esparto train station that's right there. And that's part of the phasing of this. I didn't have time to go through that. There's different phasing for this food hub, and that's part of phase 3. And that will be a community facing location where it will sell food that is produced from the food hub and be more of a community location. I think that there could be some conversation about, once that area is up to, a resilience facility, can the community come and, charge their phones, charge their electric vehicles if there's a public safety power shutoff. So I think it's definitely an opportunity. I just don't think the location is as convenient as the Esparto train station, but in the interim, yeah.
Grace, thank you.
Thanks very much. One of the things that really excited me about what we heard today too is especially one of the charts that Melissa put up on the life cycle of waste, is how closely what we've been talking about aligns with the concept of circular economy, and that reducing waste and the unnecessary exploitation of resources is something that'll be at the foundation of our CAP. So I think we have here an exciting opportunity to build on what these two projects that we've heard about today have established for our county and our region. Some of the words that we heard, not only the education and the jobs that are generated in each of the elements of the systems that have been described, but also we heard reuse, and hopefully we're going to get to a point where we are also repurposing and repairing. And again, that is the source of job and skills creation. So I'm very excited about the specifics of what they presented, as well as the conceptual foundation for what we're trying to build here in Yolo County. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. So I'm going to do a time check with the commission at this time. It is 6:02. We are going to take public comments very shortly. Before we do that, we have another very important item in terms of the length of the discussion that is required. Show of hand if it's okay. So what will be realistic is that we allocate an additional 15 minutes tonight, but checking with you all, you need to speak, Commissioner Britton, because this, I'm not sure what that means.
Yes, perhaps more than 15 minutes to look at the item that we're going to be talking about. But of course,
Okay.
Everyone has
So-
to chime in.
Thank you. This is what's going to happen. So right now I'm going to open the floor for public comments. When we close this item, we're gonna officially approve on, going a little bit longer, and then Kristen will have an announcement also to share regarding this conversation. As you know, this is an over all of our presenters, including Michael, who's been a bit quiet in the past few minutes, but there's going to be follow-up, and we are going to have an opportunity to engage again very soon with the presenters. Kristen, public comments?
Great. So we have two folks with hands raised, but first Scott Stewart had to leave early and requested we add public comment for the record. So it says that the people and programs presented today are inspiring as we accelerate this change away from a fossil fuel economy to a renewable, resilient society. My appreciation to the council and staff, because the collective work in Yolo, we are on the path to practice and become a best practice center on the incentives and disincentives that will instruct all of our business and public sectors, regardless of current inclinations, to be proactive about climate change.
Thank you.
And the first person to speak is Christine Shoemaker.
Christine, you have 3 minutes. You're invited to share any affiliation you'd like us to know about. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So my name is Christine Shoemaker, and I'm from Woodland, and I have a long-standing interest through a variety of organizations in addressing climate change. And I thought that all three presentations were really great. So I have two questions, one from Mr. Hendricks and one for Grace, but I'll state both questions and or comments, and then if either wants to respond, they can. So to Mr. Hendricks, I'm just interested in if, in addition to looking at the carbon emissions of all the food sources that you have, are you also going to be able to come back with us with any of the what I would call the water footprint? And the reason I ask that is because I've been told in the past through other things, through plant molecular biology, whatever, that the carbon footprint of beef is the water footprint of beef is much, much bigger on a, gallons per pound than a lot of the others. So I think if that was possible to do, it just might be interesting at a top level for the community to know how much water it takes for that pound of hamburger versus the pound of rice. And so my second question to Grace Kaufman, I was really impressed with all of that work. I'm just wanting to know, are you expecting that all of the power that is used in your facility will be electric? So you will not use any natural gas, you will not use any propane, it'll all be electric. And therefore you're going to be able to find heat pumps that do all of what you want to do, cool your food, cool your water, etc. I think it's really exciting. I just wanted to know a little bit more specifics on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And I will invite our presenters to try to keep the answers brief if they can.
Okay. We do not have the budget to go that deep into the different food products and come up with the specifics within the consumption inventory. However, when we're talking about natural and working lands, and in particular water use related to ag, we will be going into the different irrigation techniques and the different types of water use and how that can be reduced, that will in turn reduce GHGs.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for your question. We haven't done the calculations yet as far as natural gas. All of the planning that's in there right now is for it to be all electric and heat pump. There is the possibility that if we're not able to get enough storage in renewable energy sources, that we might have to have a renewable natural gas system in place if there's a public safety power shutoff and there's not enough battery storage.
Thank you. And we have one last public comment with, if I may say, state your title, Nobel Grant, Larry Gunther, if Odd Fellow. Yeah.
Hi, I just, I did want to echo Christine Shoemaker's comment about a water footprint, getting that down. I did want to ask Marissa because, and I guess it applies for action to the climate plan. Is there any, and maybe it already exists, I don't pay the bill, sorry, differential pricing for garbage versus green waste versus recycling?
I'll come up here so it's on the record and you can all hear me. We do a couple different things. So at your household, built into our solid waste franchise agreements, we have a requirement that the haulers have a pay-as-you-throw system for unincorporated. Remember, I represent unincorporated Yolo County. So those residents, if you have the mini can, the 35 gallon, you're going to pay less than if you have the large 96 gallon trash can. So the less you throw away, the less you're paying. When you come to the landfill, we have a slightly different structure. So at the landfill, for example, if you're bringing us a load of the organic material or the load of garbage, we actually have the rates the same. So like our rate is $80 per ton, and it is structured that way so that we can direct where it goes. What we have learned through the years is that many of our customers that come through the gate, when it's there, it's no longer their problem, right? Because they just want it to go away. And so we learned that if we charge a higher rate, because it costs more to compost material than it does to bury it, that if we charge more for compost, they would choose the throwaway option. So the rates are actually stabilized in a way that you come through, our staff assesses that load, and then they will say that is predominantly garbage, we'll send you to the landfill. But if it is predominantly organic material, it can be recovered, and we just need our staff to do some sorting out of a minimal amount of waste, then we direct them to the compost facility. Yeah.
Thank you, Marisa. We have one more public comment online.
The next public comment is from Alfred Melbourne.
Alfred, you have the floor. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. Amazing programs to listen into. Of course, the landfill, free compost. I'm not exactly sure if we are getting it from you, but we are working with Susan Strand in West Sacramento, and we receive about, at one of our sites, 40 yards, probably once a week. I don't know, it's going pretty quick over there because the farm operates 5 acres, and then we have our small farms right here in the community in Broderick that's continuously receiving it. So great job, Marissa. We're happy to receive it. We're saving thousands of dollars. We do believe that it should be expanded and or replicated elsewhere. Yeah, so Valley Vision too, I was really happy to hear of the food hub that they're putting together and the great work that they're going to be doing in Yolo County. We all know that we can use the support in a lot of the small towns. So thank you, Grace Kaufman and Valley Vision. Just ask that, you look to partnering with other organizations that are doing the work and helping support those folks that have been doing the work also, but on a much smaller scale. Yeah, I was interested to hear that Michael Hendricks with the consumption-based inventory and the model they're following out of Berkeley. We have like a lot of ideas that we want to ask here. And it's like, what is our ecological footprint based on? Like, what is each individual's report card or carbon footprint? How can we find out if we are doing our best? And are we who we say we are? Those are questions that we need to ask ourselves as we move forward. It's obvious that we are the problem and the solution. It's too late for us to do better. We need to take big steps by our leaders, who you guys are all in touch with and are connecting with. We need to do things that people may not find comfortable or even like. Eliminating bottled water, eliminating grass, planting edible landscapes, permaculture designs, tax overuse of high water. Those who have pools can't afford it or lose it. It's obvious that we need a World War II style effort to combat the climate catastrophe or crisis. We need people to move now. Transferring over to electric vehicles and a lot of these things ain't really going to support us over the long run. I say look to the native indigenous people of this land, of course, the Patwin, Miwok, Maidu, Nisenan, Pomo. There's many. I'm sure you guys can reach out to, consult, and make sure you're tapping in with them to learn their native ways that have been sustaining this land for thousands of years. So it's obvious to me that we are leaders right here underneath the eye of the Capitol. We need to support efforts already in place, especially native-led, indigenous, and or people of color. And I'm throwing up some quotations for that. I mentioned earlier, I am the director of Three Sisters Gardens, Native Indigenous-led nonprofit supporting at potential high promise youth. Like Valley Vision, we're meeting with our stakeholders over here to get support for so we can have our own food hub right here in Broderick, a worker-owned food co-op, so that we can be providing food for ourselves, gleaning programs, taking care of the trees that we already have in place, right? These things that we don't want to lose. But yeah, it's good to hear a lot of the programs that are being instituted, and getting support for those programs that are in place, and making sure that you're partnering with agencies. So, but I'm happy to participate. Like I said, listen into all of this. As you guys can see, there's not much interest, and it's sad to say, sad to see, sad to be on the front edge out here pulling. And we need to double our efforts, triple our efforts, quadruple our efforts as a county, as a state, city, getting everybody involved. I can go on and on and on, you guys, but I appreciate the time you guys offer me and the work that you guys are doing. I'm coming in late here with you all, but I'm happy to be listening and able to partner with or connect with folks that are doing similar work. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. And your comment is, in public records, so many people will be able to hear it. And as a reminder, Alfred is with the Three Sisters Garden Farm, which has been doing a lot for the community. So if you reach out to that organization, you'll be able to be in contact with him. So at this point, just making sure we don't have any additional public comments. Okay, it is 6:15 already. I suggest that we close our time on agenda item number 8. I would like to thank again all of our 3 presenters, Michael, Marissa, and Grace. As you can see, there was lots of interest, enthusiasm, support, excitement, and I can go on and on. And you already know there will be follow-ups. Thanking again also our sustainability team for putting it all together. There's a lot of things that we're talking about tonight. We're closing agenda item number 8. We are going to officially move to have this meeting be a bit longer. I would like to suggest that we go, we accept to go until 7 p.m. for those who are able. We need to put it to a vote so we know if you have a quorum to continue. If you need to leave early, we understand. But I think that an additional 45 minutes will be realistic, reasonable, and if we end early, then good. So, Kristen, do you want to just guide us into making sure we follow the right protocol? Do we make a motion at this time?
Make a motion, yes.
Okay.
Second.
So I guess I made a motion to go until 7 p.m. Commissioner Reid did a second. Question, comments on that before we vote? Commissioner White.
I have one question about this item. Is this a decision item or an information only item?
So and I think that that's something that we can decide. Looking at the staff report, and I can't remember, I'm got to pull it up right now and I'm going to grab it.
And while you're looking that up, one of the reasons is it's one thing for us, but we also have our consultants on the phone. And if we're asking them to stay another, 45 minutes or 30 minutes, I want to make sure that if this is just to review and hear what they're proposing, that's one thing. If they're asking us to make a decision, I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to do so and we're being respectful of our consultants' time.
So in here, so this is something maybe we can talk about. So one of the recommended actions is to approve the framework. I think that it is also possible that discussing this in 45 minutes, even an hour or 2 hours, is not going to get us to that decision. And so one of the things we did talk with the DUDEC team, we are able to offer, compliant with the Brown Act, small group follow-up conversations where we can go into ask additional questions after this meeting between now and October. And then in October, we can approve the framework with this additional time. I think that Potentially in October is when we are also hoping to bring strategies forward for consideration. It does get a little tight in terms of the October meeting agenda then. We can also dedicate the entire 2.5 hours to the framework and the strategies, and I think that that's fine. So I think with that being said, we could, 6:45 still only gets us a half hour of discussion on this item, which is brief. Going to 7 gives us 30 minutes of collective discussion after the presentation, and then we can still have those follow-up conversations. And forego approving at this point, but I defer to you all and how you'd like to move forward with timing.
Any reaction to what you just heard before we go to a vote? Personally, I do suggest that we take the time tonight and we have, 4 weeks during which we can have additional conversations with the DUDEC team, and in October we'll be better informed. Yes, okay. I think we're ready to vote.
Can I quickly though, Sarah, you're on the line here. Does staying on till 7 work for you? I know it's an additional half hour. I apologize.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I appreciate the consideration, but I can stay on until 7.
Thank you, Sarah. We appreciate it. Didn't mean to overlook your time commitment. Okay, so let's vote.
Too many papers in front of me. And thank you so much, Carla.
Thank you,
So
Carla.
nice to meet you in person.
Yes.
Okay, so roll call. Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
Commissioner Daddle.
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman.
Aye.
Commissioner Serena.
Aye.
Commissioner White.
Aye.
Chair Mbondo.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett.
Aye.
And Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all. So the motion passes. So we will stay in session up until 7 p.m. Quick question before we start with agenda item number 9, which Kristen will jumpstart for us. Do you need a quick minute-to-minute break? Yes. So Sarah, thank you for your patience. We need just about 2 minutes to stretch our legs and then get some water and so on, and we'll be back. Thank you. It is 6:20, so 6:22, 23 we'll resume our meeting. Thank you all.
Okay.
think we are ready to resume our session.
Mhm.
Don't make me use the gavel again. That was terrifying.
It was scary.
Um, Okay. So what I suggest is, so we're gonna get started and Commissioner Reed will catch up when she's able. It is already 6:25, so let's do that.
And so I'll very quickly, I'll pass it off to Sarah from the DUDEC team. The goal of this meeting, so we are getting to the nitty gritty of how we structure our climate action adaptation plan. The purpose of today is to have a discussion, as we said, amending our staff report. We're not going to be voting to approve. We're going to have a discussion on it at this time to discuss the framework for how we will approach the CAP. Sarah's going to be presenting the overall goals, and then at a subsequent meeting, likely next month, we will be having a discussion on the strategies and everything that populates this plan. And so thinking of this as that overall framework, again, we can follow up after this. Would be happy to set up small group conversations to continue this conversation, and then we'll come back in October with an amended version for the group. So with that, I will pass it off to Sarah to run through our overview, and then we'll take as much time as we can for discussion. And
Great, thank you, Kristen. Yeah, do you have the slide for me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, let me adjust my view real quick. All right. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so thank you, Kristen, for the intro. The DUDEC team, as Kristen mentioned, has started drafting the organization of the county's CAP implementation plan. And so here I'm going to just give a brief overview for discussion of what we've come up with. On this slide, we have the overall structure of the CAP initiation framework, which includes 3 main components. The first are the high-level strategies that encompass greenhouse gas emission and adaptation sectors relevant to achieving the county's overall goals. Each strategy is going to have measures that further focus on the sector or subsector specific objectives that will be achieved through individual implementing actions. The individual actions are specific policies, programs, or tools to be implemented. The actions will include activities that can be documented and used in the monitoring progress toward the implementation of the overall framework. Next slide, please. So here we have the list of the 9 high-level draft strategies. Most of these strategies align with the specific greenhouse gas emission sectors, with the exception of strategy 9, which is adaptation resiliency focused. Although many resiliency strategies also reduce greenhouse gas emissions and will be included in the respective emissions strategy. Our strategies include 2 related to transportation emissions, so decarbonize transportation and equipment, that includes off-road equipment, reduce vehicle miles traveled, VMT, decarbonize energy and buildings, conserve water, minimize waste, which we heard a lot about today, encourage sustainable agriculture, sequester and store carbon in the natural and working lands. These 2 are both part of the natural and working land strategy, which I can get into a little bit more detail later. And then reduce carbon footprint of consumption and production, which Michael got into today with our consumption-based inventory, and build resilient infrastructure and healthy communities. It's important to note here that this strategy list is intended to be as short as possible. So we want to capture as many concepts as possible in this short list. And the measures and actions are going to be where the specific things are identified to be implemented underneath these larger umbrella strategies. And also important to note that equity considerations are going to be woven through each of these strategies and mentioned as such as we introduce all of these strategies within the plan. Next slide, please. So implementation of the CAP is going to occur over many years. And given the ambitious emissions reduction goal, there will be a specific set of actions that are identified as most important for achieving these reductions as soon as possible. Deciding which actions should come when will require consideration of specific constraints such as available funding and the feasibility of technology. So, for example, things that just aren't available right now may be prioritized for a later phase. We have the proposed 3 main phases to best group and prioritize the strategies listed here. Phase 1 is the first 3 years of implementation and would include a lot of the foundational measures. So those measures that need to be implemented first so that other measures can follow. Phase 2 would include the actions needed to get us to the 2030 goal of carbon negative. And then we have a phase 3, which represents future phases and long-term progress. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned previously, actions will be prioritized to assess their suitability for achieving the county's goals. We've identified a list of 9 criteria to use for our action prioritization, which include the greenhouse gas reduction potential or adaptation value, those foundational or unlocking measures. So like I mentioned, those measures that need to be implemented in order for future measures to succeed, cost effectiveness, available funding, those that enhance equity, the co-benefits, including clean air, community interest. So a lot of this is going to be driven by response to our surveys, technological feasibility, and local governance and control. So while each of these is important to the process, given the ambitious goal, they aren't all necessarily equal in their importance. And so we will be weighting them accordingly in order to drive the prioritization process. Next slide, please. So the measures and actions related to natural and working lands are going to fall under the 2 strategies listed here, including encourage sustainable agriculture, which will largely address emission reductions, and sequester and store carbon in natural and working lands. As indicated on the slide, these are draft strategies. We are in coordination with the RCD and the Natural and Working Lands Working Group to finalize these strategies. So they may change, or we may have an additional strategy. To assess measures and actions for these goals, we are in the midst of data collection, which involves GIS coordination for the land cover distribution, which you can see here to the right. Majority is working lands, and the information is going to include subtypes, which will allow us to further specify, for example, agricultural lands, and so specific crop types that'll allow us to accurately estimate the sequestration potential. We are also in coordination with the RCD on this item. It was brought to our attention that some of these numbers may be off a bit. We got all of this data directly from the GIS department within Yolo. And so I think we just need a coordinating call to make sure that what we received, all of the land uses are accurately labeled. Data collection will also include the results from the working land surveys, which are currently underway. Those surveys are going to provide us information on the current practices, any barriers or challenges that workers are finding with implementing relevant strategies, any incentives that may help, and overall feasibility of the strategies that we propose. For the natural and working lands, we're currently working with the RCD. We have submitted a list of questions. We've gotten some preliminary feedback, just looking into specific locations and priority areas, information on past and ongoing efforts, and help with coordination with the relevant responsible parties for implementing the strategies that we suggest. And then next slide, please. Development of the natural and working lands measures and actions is, of course, going to leverage any current and ongoing efforts within the county, which is why it's really important that we make sure that we're including all of those things. We want to make sure we're getting credit for all the great things that are already occurring. The measures and actions for the working lands will include those to reduce emissions, as I said before, and those to sequester carbon. And then again, development of these measures and actions is going to rely heavily upon coordination with the RCD and just review of current efforts, including any Yolo habitat HCPs and CCPs. We have a list of all relevant plans that we're going to be reviewing which will be an ongoing effort. So I believe that's our last slide. Any questions that you may have, I'm happy to answer.
Okay. Yes. I think you're going first though. If you're ready for us, yeah. Sorry, I was having conversation with Commissioner Reed. Sarah, we thank you very much thank you for the presentation. We're already excited to follow up with you on that. So Commissioner Reed has the floor now.
Thank you. I'm going to try and do a more generic thing instead of getting into the detail of it. But one of the things that I had in mind when we started talking about creating a CAP is to have a document that is ultimately readable by everyone. And so I have an interest in, I've read a lot of CAPs. I have a strong interest in taking as much bureaucratization out of the process and the narrative as possible, so that this will be a document that could be used by our residents and embraced by our residents, so they can define their role in the implementation process. And that role should be well characterized within the document, not as a should, but as a can, what you can do to contribute to the success of our plan, and the benefits that will accrue to the county as a result of that participation. In this I understand that this is an isolated presentation of a specific framework, but when I think about our plan, what I would love to see is that it opens with a vision of what we want Yolo County to look like and be like through implementation of the CAP, and that it paints that picture for our residents and our businesses and our stakeholders throughout. So I'm just going to leave that there. I think part of that vision, as I articulated earlier in my comments, had to do with creating the foundation of a circular economy here in Yolo County that can extend to the region, and also featuring equity throughout, and that those become a set of values that underlie the development and the implementation of the plan. I see in the criteria later on that you've addressed in the presentation leverage as an important element, but I think it's something that we need to keep top of mind in terms of what our role as a county, as a governance structure, is going to be relative to the roles, and I think these should be defined in the plan, that our local governments and our regional partners also play in the implementation and the success of the plan, as well as I'm hoping that we will have a very good idea among the strategies where we get the biggest, where we have the highest potential for success and the biggest bang for the buck of the effort that we put into the implementation of the strategies. And I think that those should be articulated. And at the end, I think what we need to also talk about is the work that still needs to be done to get where we want to be, and what we need to do better, and what gaps need to be filled as we create this regional, collaborative, integrated way of improving the quality of life for all our residents and addressing the challenges of climate change and creating a resilient community. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed, and also for painting the big picture of, when the commission started, some of the principles that we had put forth, and sharing your priorities on that. Adelita, I saw that you reacted first, and Ken also has his hand raised, so I don't know who is first.
Well, one, thank you for the layout and thank you, Commissioner Reed, for, just that big picture perspective, which is what we had initially embarked upon when we started to, basically sketch out what the climate emergency resolution should address. One of the communities that comes to mind when I think about all of this, all of it has just been laid out, is Knights Landing, being a rural community in an unincorporated area that has very limited access to transportation and is a food desert. And the residents there, in order to feed their families, have to drive to Woodland to get groceries. And so a community like that, I think, should be focused on what would be the solutions when we think about all of these things, right, laid out. And in addition, when I look at the natural and working land strategies, there is, this pie, and we're talking about 56% being agriculture. That's a huge chunk. And of course, that's, one of our main exports here. Would love to see more thought go into the ag workers. I know that we spoke about equity, but how do we address, or in these pies, how we're going to weave in some kind of landscape solution for them in the, harvest seasons when the heat, is dangerous. And I know that it was one of the things myself and Commissioner Bennett spoke about. What were those things called? Trellises? I don't know, but these shade options that are not just shade, but can be built into those areas. Hedgerows. Thank you. So there's just something like that. I just do think, because I see, different bullet points here. I would love to see more thought just woven into these little pies here around, when we're talking about ag workers also being addressed in these pies. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Serena. Ken?
Yeah, thank you. That's, it's a great start. And I'm going to follow up on what Commissioner Serena was talking about. And I agree with you completely. Not all these criteria are created equal. And I'm curious, at the top level, how are you what's the process by which you decide which criteria should rise to the top and which should settle down in your internal workings through as you're doing the hard work? How do you see these priorities falling out? And how are those going to be rank ordered more specifically? Because I agree they have to be rank ordered before you can actually start laying down, actual priorities of projects and implementation. So how are you guys thinking about that? How can we help?
That's a really great question. I think with the ambitious goal, as someone had mentioned, we have almost 6 years to get to net negative, that a lot of this is going to rely on what's feasible now. And so a lot of these bigger actions that we have, technology just might not be there, as well as funding. Available funding to get these things off the ground is going to be a key component of what's going to rise to the top. And then emissions reduction potential, things that maybe just aren't as don't have the cost effectiveness with emissions reductions per dollar value probably won't be one of our ones that rise to the top early on. And then with all of those main big priorities, we're going to need to weigh the equity, the adaptation, the resilience, co-benefits that we're speaking about now, because we need to get to that net negative by our goal of 2030. And so really everything is on the table. But we have to do what's feasible. And so those are going to be like the main priority criteria that we're going to be looking at first. And I see that, Michael, did you have something to add?
I was going to say that an unlocking measure is key to, it's the thing you start with. So that would be heavily weighted at the beginning because you need it to move to the next step. I also wanted to say, this picture that was painted of having a vision and then having a document that everyone could read, we are on the same page. The whole team had talked about this, and we are reviewing and synthesizing, if you will, different ways of that vision. A lot of that vision is going to come from the community input and the outreach that's going on right now. But love this idea of having a climate action adaptation plan that the citizens of Yolo County can look at and read and understand where their part is in that. And a lot of that is going to be in the consumption recommendations, those things that families, businesses, and individuals can do to reduce their own carbon footprint.
Agreed.
So
And
I wanted, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, yeah, we have been, our team has been talking about this. I think it came up when we were having a back and forth on the table of contents. I believe we're going to have a lot of the more technical stuff in appendices that people can access, and then the public facing plan is going to be easily digestible to the public. It's going to be very clear. I think with Commissioner Reed, you mentioned you wanted to be very clear who is involved in implementing these measures, and our measures sheet, we're developing our organization for that right now, but we are going to be very clear on funding availability, how to access funding, who the responsible parties are, who's involved, what the local governance control is. And so we're hoping for this to be very easy to understand, very easy to implement. People can go in here and know exactly what their role is going to be.
Thank you, Sarah and Michael. Kristen?
Thank you. And I think also synthesizing some of Commissioner Reed and Commissioner Serena's comments, like something that also in these strategies or how the strategies are presented, this like thinking about community resilience or community health as being components that are woven in here. I don't know how they fit into a strategy, but that's a theme that I think has already come up several times and has been important to the conversation. So I don't know if it's restructuring these strategies to be more sort of centered around that vision, or adding additional strategies that do capture some of those additional elements about the human health aspects of climate adaptation. So that was just one thought to share based on some of the comments that we've received. And then a question in terms of if we were to bring the prioritization weighting categories to the commission, what an appropriate timing would be for that as we think of a long range calendar.
Thank you, Kristen. We're going to hold on to the question you asked. I want to go to Commissioner Morgan before taking additional reactions. Yes, Sarah.
I just want to piggyback off of what Kristen said. Another theme I keep hearing is closed loop systems and circular economy. So maybe capturing that as a value, again, whether it's in a draft strategy or if it's further down the line in the actions or a way to prioritize. But I feel like that's been mentioned a lot. So just to capture that more in how we're considering our actions. And then I had a specific question for you, Sarah. In looking at the draft strategies, and I apologize because I'm on the natural working lands TAC, but wasn't at the last meeting. But could you speak to what the difference in encouraged sustainable agriculture is as compared to things that in my mind would be incorporated into doing that? For example, we already have decarbonizing transportation and equipment, conserving water, minimizing waste, reducing our carbon footprint. So can you just speak more to why there's a separate sustainable agriculture and what that entails?
Sure. Yeah. And I think that that's going to be something that happens a lot with this. And just to address a lot of these strategies that we're talking about that we want included, we will likely see as measures and actions underneath each of these strategies. So we're really trying to keep the strategies list to this broad overarching idea for which actions and measures can fall. And so listening to these suggested actions that I'm hearing tonight, I can already think of the strategies that we can have them within, if not something that we touch on as a co-benefit of each of the actions or each of the measures. And then to your point, yes. So we are right now trying to work through how we're going to frame the sustainable agriculture. And so a lot of the measures could fall under a few different strategies, and we're just going to have to find the ones that they most accurately are characterized by. And so some that I can think of is sustainable or drip irrigation or electric off-road equipment. And I would say that those that are more specifically agriculturally focused, something that we want the ag community to specifically look at, we're going to want to put into sustainable agriculture. Those that are more broad and general off-road equipment are going to go under decarbonized transportation and equipment. And those things that can apply for, let's say, water efficiency, if it's not ag specific, it's probably going to go, if it's something that can be applied to residential, community level, it's probably going to go into conserve water. But those are decisions we're going to have to make how best to characterize and how best to organize. But that being said, there are some that are going to be able to fall under a few strategies.
Thank you, Sarah. Commissioner Serena, then Commissioner Reed and Commissioner White. I'm sorry, I'm blanking here. Yes. Yes, Adelita.
Oh, I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, okay. So Commissioner Reed.
Thanks. I was just going to address Kristen's question. I think, and Sarah just touched on a little bit more in the sustainability issue in response to the other Sarah's question. And that in the vision, there's going to have to be some discussion of what is resilience and what is adaptation. And resilience, in my mind, includes all the elements that Kristen was mentioning with respect to health, and I would add food access and other things to that as well. The difference between adaptation and resilience, is something else that I think a narrative needs to be built around. Is in addition to what is equity and what is sustainability. I'm sure there'll be other terminology that comes up that also requires how we define it and how it's incorporated and addressed in a plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Commissioner White.
Thank you. And Sarah and DUDEC team, this is really awesome. You've clearly put a lot of thought and a lot of work into this, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to give you nitpicky things. The first thing is on that draft strategies, only number 6 says encourage. Everything else is really strongly worded. We're going to do it. And that one says, we're going to ask people really nicely if they please would. So I know we're looking for verbs, but I would find a better verb there. The other thing is on the prioritization list, which I think is one of the things that Kristen asked about. One of the things that needs to go at the top of the list is it legal? Can we do it without changing the law? We're finding in a lot of other projects that zoning is really becoming a big problem. So for instance, even as we were hearing from the Yolo Food Hub, there are some zoning rules that are at the top level that make it really hard to put in big battery storage facilities. So I think the first thing on the list needs to be is, can we do it? That's an easy way to cross stuff out. If the EPA says no, then we're not doing that one.
This is a great point, and that's definitely going. Yeah, that's definitely part of our consideration with which actions come first, which actions we prioritize. I think at this point we have, I think, a list of around 200 actions that are on the table. It's going to take a lot to get us to net negative within 6 years, and so all that to say, we want to include everything and just have that information, everything that we can and everything that is, relevant to Yolo. But we want to have that information present in case at some point in the future things change, regulations change, opportunities change, because this is a plan that we're hoping to go out. We have it until 2045. We have it as a living document. And so we really want to have everything on the table for consideration. And also just as an opportunity to bring these measures up and say, you know, if we made these changes, look at all of the sequestration potential we have here, or look at all of the reduction potential we have here. But that is definitely something that we're going to highlight, is the local regulations and any barriers to implementing the individual actions. And I have noted remove, encourage.
How about making it farm sustainably? Or
That
grow
sounds, yeah.
sustainably?
Something
Then we have
strong,
nice-
yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is great. We run into this all the time with CEQA. Your mitigation has to be strong language.
It's
Before
a
I give,
fine line.
before I give, oh, sorry, Michael, keep going.
Oh, I was going to say, when we're getting into farmers' personal business, so we're drawing a fine line on how we word that.
I can see you proceeding with caution, Michael, not to single you
Yes.
out. So before I give the floor to Commissioner Reed, I want to check with Commissioner Bennett. Do I see that you're raising your hand also? Yes. Okay.
Palaio has his hand.
And then, yeah, and Commissioner Alvarez also like the floor. We're listening, Micah.
I do appreciate the effort to keep the strategies down to some very broad categories so that you don't overwhelm people with a lot of little details so that they can't follow what's going on. So these couple of things I'm offering here, I think might go under the unlocking strategy or prioritization item that you were talking about. But I've offered them as feedback to the natural and working lands recommendations or framework, which is to offer meaningful support to farmers contributing to climate change mitigation and adaptation solutions, including protecting farm workers from extreme weather. And 2, develop creative financing and policy options for providing this support. And I notice, I mean, one of the criteria is available funding. I have concerns about relying completely on grant funding, which seems to be the direction that we follow. I so appreciate the effort that's been put into getting grants, and it's really allowed us to jumpstart and get as far as we are. But at some point, I think we need to try to consider more consistent forms of financing. And I feel like we're saying this is a huge emergency and we have to be doing things by 2030. And then we say, give us some grants so we can do it, and everything else remains business as usual. So I feel like that somewhere in there needs to be some consideration about how we can do that. And I've had some people mention some ideas to me. I don't want to bring all that up right now.
Mike, before Sarah reacts, I want to thank you for all the points that you've raised, especially in regards to the funding. As a reminder, when the commission was created, collectively, when we were selecting early action projects, we were intentional about the money that will be, providing for those projects, that it be a catalyst. So the idea again was for all of those projects to be viable once the funding has dried up. And you make an excellent point regarding, raising caution about depending on grants. So with that said, and I think that it's probably a conversation that we will go more in depth when we're able to follow up, with the DUDEC team. But maybe instead of, funding available, excuse me, something along the lines of a funding model could be a term that we explore. The idea being also that with the strategies that we are suggesting, we make it possible for all the stakeholders who are involved into helping us reach our climate goals. We make it possible for them to be financially strong. And that doesn't just mean telling them and showing where the money is or giving money, but it also means assistance, technical assistance when it comes to having a budget, a plan, and just finding ways to be self-sufficient, sustainable. So Sarah and Michael, do you want to react to what you heard? And then we'll hear from Commissioner Alvarez and from Commissioner Reed. And we almost
sure. Yes. And these are great points, and I really appreciate the feedback. I think there's two things here. Prioritization criteria of available funding. I think what's important there is we're looking at things that are available now, and that more goes into how to prioritize the phasing of when we go about things. That doesn't mean that an action or a measure that doesn't have available funding will not be implemented. It just means that we're looking to the ones that are more easily implementable now versus something that may take a little bit of time to figure out a funding strategy. That being said, creative funding strategies are going to be under with all of these strategies, so it would be creative financing actions and measures are going to be something that's relevant to all of these. And we have two economists on our team that, and I don't want to speak too much. They're the experts, and they're gonna come in and they're gonna give us those ideas. But I am interested. I believe it was I received the feedback about meaningful support for protecting farm workers from climate health and then creative financing. I believe it was from Commissioner Bennett. And I believe you said that there were some other strategies and ideas that you have, and I would love to hear those. I'm guessing at another date if you can send those along. But these are all things that are also going to be implemented within the plan.
Thank you, Sarah.
Michael, did you have something to add?
Well, I was just going to define resiliency versus adaptation. That was a question quite a while ago. Adaptation are distinct actions and measures that we take that increase the overall resiliency to climate change. So, give you an example. We are having more and more wildfires and extreme weather events that create emergencies all the time. People need to evacuate. So an action to that would be creating, being more mindful of the fuel loads within the urban wildland interface. And another one would be securing and analyzing escape routes for different scenarios. And then a third one would be, and this will get into a little bit of equity, would be figuring out ways for those vulnerable populations that may not be able to evacuate themselves, ways that they can evacuate. And one of the strategies we're coming up with is developing an emergency response team, which would be volunteers led by the sheriff, police, fire departments, that would organize and pick out those communities and neighborhoods where those vulnerable populations live and have shuttles go out there during evacuations. So these would be people that are elderly, handicapped, or in some way impaired to be able to transport themselves. And if you could bear with me just a minute, that vision I have with that, getting funding for electric shuttles would be perfect for that. And having these teams practice on a monthly basis their evacuation strategies, which would also serve the purpose of doing wellness checks of those people, which would also have the co-benefit of having the community interface and meet people they would not normally probably interact with except for these exercises they're doing. So by the time an emergency arrives, this emergency response team, having practiced this month in and month out, the different scenarios for floods and fire and other emergencies, goes into action, goes to those communities to evacuate those people. And those shuttles would mostly be unused, except you could also have the county leverage them to use them as farm worker shuttles for going to work. So farmers could actually borrow those to do that. And we haven't figured out the full extent of how that one measure would work toward making the community more resilient and more equitable. And it falls into several categories. It reduces GHGs, it reduces VMTs, it is creating adaptation measures that make the community more resilient. So there's a lot of overlap with any one set of measures that you have.
Michael, there is a lot to unpack in what you shared, which we're not going to do now also. But I thank you. I thank you for that additional, the context that you provided here. Before we listen to Commissioner Alvarez, I want you all to be aware that it is 7:05 p.m. and I'm going to use my executive privilege to move us along. So we're going to listen to Pelayo, Commissioner Reed, open to public comment, and then we're going to wrap up the meeting because you are over time. And also I'm commending this commission. We do enjoy working together. Look at us being overachievers. Okay, so Pelayo, we're listening. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. And due to the time constraints, I'm not expecting an answer. Just want to raise a question about wondering why the term sustainable agriculture was chosen, suggesting like Commissioner Reed said, a specific definition for what we mean, what is sustainable agriculture, and maybe suggesting looking into other terms that are used like climate smart or regenerative agriculture in place of sustainable agriculture.
I believe sustainable was chosen. I think we were trying to make the distinction between those strategies that we were going to use as carbon sequestration and storage versus those that specifically are used to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I've written down climate smart, which I think I've seen used in natural working land specifically for carbon sequestration. The California Natural Resources plan for climate smart strategies specifically focuses on carbon sequestration strategies. And so I'd be wary of using the term climate smart because I do think it's thrown around in that context. And we really want to make sure we're specifically talking about the emission reducing strategies or emission reducing measures and actions. What was the second suggestion that you had?
Yeah, using regenerative agriculture.
Okay.
But in any case, having specific definitions for what we
Definitely. Need. Yeah. And I think I've heard that mentioned a few times on this call too, is making sure with resiliency, adaptation, defining our equity, defining these terms is going to definitely be part of the vision and part of the introduction of our plan. I think a lot of these terms are used pretty consistently throughout plans, but you will find certain climate action plans that we'll call what we're going to call strategies, actions, or measures. And so really being clear on what our organization is, what our terms mean, is going to be a focus in setting the stage and the vision for the plan up front. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Pelayo. And I think he also used the expression climate smart. Kristen?
And I was just going to add for Pelayo, I know that you were sick last week, but we, the Natural and Working Lands Technical Advisory Committee, reviewed a draft version of the ag specific strategies and would welcome any written comments that you have on that. As we mentioned, these ones in particular are still very draft because the Natural and Working Lands TAC is really going to be going through a couple of iterations of that. So definitely encourage you to take a deep dive on those and provide any written comments by the end of the week.
Thanks, Kristen. Commissioner Reed?
I'll go as fast as I can. Based on this prior conversation, I think vocabulary is going to be another discussion. One of the cases in point is what Michael was describing as some of the measures that, from my point of view, came more in terms of a response as opposed to prevention. And so in terms of adaptation and resilience, things like hardening a homestead against fires or having a better filtration and way to protect yourself from wildfire smoke within your home are other matters. So I think that the whole panoply of these terms is something we're probably going to need another conversation about. In response to the very appropriate comment of Commissioner White. I think it also begs to not only identify what the legality of what we're proposing is, and then potentially the need for change in public policy also means that we need within the implementation and advocacy strategy that's part of our implementation plan for advancing changes in local, regional, or state law that may facilitate implementation. And with respect to Commissioner Bennett's comments on the grant funding and over-reliance on grant funding, then comment regarding grant funding leading to scale up and viability for the projects that we begin with. I think it's also important that we're looking for commercial opportunities for many of the things that we're going to propose to do at the end of the day can actually be commercial and investment opportunities that we should be aware of that possibility, as it will also contribute to the economic sustainability of the county. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. So I'm going along with the plan that I had laid out. I know we have many more questions. I have questions, so we're going to have a follow-up with the DUDEC team. So please make sure you write them down. Do we have any public comments on this?
I'll just say I will plan on by midweek following up with you all with time slots for follow-up conversations in the next 2 weeks or so that we can come forward at the October meeting with an updated framework for consideration.
Thank you.
And we have public comment from Christine Shoemaker.
And do we have commissioners who need to leave right now?
I do.
Okay, Commissioner Serena and Commissioner Bennett, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be adjourning shortly. And Christine Shoemaker, you have the floor.
So thank you, and I want to thank you for the very vigorous discussion that took place here. So I have more what I would say is a process question. It sounds like in October we're going to be perhaps approving the strategies. Then further down the line, we are going to be approving whatever you call them, the ways and means, whatever the approaches. I'm just kind of wondering where along the line, as you go forward with this, the plan is to update the Board of Supervisors on where we are after we approve the strategies. And I guess I just think it's important to kind of decide where that happens.
Solar project.
I just think it's kind of important to say where that, when that happens. The board has done two things over the last couple of months. One was to approve the agricultural project, and the other was, as Kristen said, to approve the 300 million. And that was no small lift. I listened to the board discussion on that. Just what to do with the quote unquote leftover ARP money took like an hour and 51 minutes just on that one action item, not the whole board meeting, just that one action item. And we were fortunate at the end, we got the 300 million, or Kristen got us the 300 million.
300,000.
Excuse me, you're right.
But Kristen,
folks.
Kristen, I want you to be our chief officer when it comes to budgeting. You know where the money is.
So anyway, my overall question is how you want to approach keeping the Board of Supervisors updated with where you're going, not too often, but not coming to them next June and they have no idea what's coming.
So I think that touches on the advocacy strategy that Commissioner Reed mentioned, and this is definitely, I believe, something we'll be further discussing with the DUDEC team, and when we have a subcommittee, equity and engagement. Kristen wants to.
And I will just say, I actually had a conversation this afternoon with the county's public information officer, Dwight Coddington, who actually stopped in and listened to some of our meeting. My current plan is to go to the board at the November 7th board meeting. At that point, we will have had discussions of both the strategies and our framework. Wanted to make sure that I waited until we had a conversation on all of those things. There's in the final item, which I will not walk through, attachment J, I have laid out the timeline, and thanks, Christine, that meeting was not on here. But the plan is to give them that framework. At the same time, we're also going to be talking to county staff, so department heads of other departments who are going to be impacted by this framework and strategy. So those are conversations that are going to be happening in the next month and a half or so.
Okay, thank you.
And I wish we had 300 million.
We all do.
Yeah. Christine, I want to thank you again very much for your public comment. And yes, any additional public comment for us? Thanks for joining us tonight. No? Okay. So this concludes our time on agenda item number 9. It's 7:15. We're going to quickly look at agenda item 10. We're talking about, commission members, maybe reports, announcement. If there is something you'd like to see included in the newsletter, please send an email to the sustainability team. What is the deadline?
Ideally, the second Friday of the month.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Britton? No?
Giving a thumbs up, yes.
Okay. Any future agenda items that someone wants to bring up? Commissioner Reed? Yes?
I would love to see us do the same as we did for food today and waste, a discussion of water and the groundwater sustainability management agencies activities, also relative to whatever is going on with at the state level as well.
I second what Commissioner Reed said. I was actually reserving that as well as a follow-up with the DUDEC team to see how that fits in the climate action and adaptation plan draft. So we're making note of that. Thank you, Suzanne. Anything else from our commissioners? Not at this time. Okay. So any public comments on that? Following protocol here, none. This concludes our time on agenda item 10. Agenda item 11 is the long range calendar. That's attachment I. So you've had time to look at the document. You're taking it home. Any reactions on that before we close on this? This is really just as a, yes, Kristen? No? Okay. Public comments on that? No. Okay, so this concludes our time on agenda item number 11. I don't know how I did not hear any stomach growls during this meeting. The meeting is officially adjourned at 7:15. Again, I'm thanking the sustainability staff. You're doing fantastic work. Welcome to the new Civic Sparks Fellow. Commissioners, thank you for being so gracious with your time. The DEC team, it's still fantastic, a pleasure to work with you. Thank you for staying longer. And to members of the public, Scott Stewart is gone, Christine Shoemaker, and everyone who attended in person, we want to thank you again for supporting the work of this commission. Have a good end of the month of September, good October. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Wow.